Chapter 1902. Luo Yin and the rest had intended to take advantage of the chaos to escape, but they were quickly pushed back by the raging energy. Looking at the sky that was collapsing inch by inch, listening to the constant cracking sounds coming from the ground, Luo Yin felt as if his body was being torn apart by countless forces. He hurriedly activated his force and set up a barrier around himself. However, that terrifying energy attack still sent chills down their spines. They even had to use all the energy in their bodies to barely stay where they were and not be swept away by the various forces. Luo Yin clenched his fists, his heart thumping so hard that it almost jumped out of his chest. Peach Blossom Cove's barrier had completely collapsed, and they had no way of getting out. Ink Sword Sect and Chu Luiyue wanted everyone to die with them. At the same time, the people in the city also sensed that something was wrong, and they all looked up. Not good. Peach Blossom Cove's barrier has been destroyed. With that, countless people began to run out of Peach Blossom Cove in a panic. However, the energy between heaven and earth had completely gone out of control. Those who were slightly stronger could barely hold on, but those who were not were already showing all sorts of reactions. Their faces were pale and their breathing was ragged. Some could not bear the pressure of the rapidly collapsing space and kept spitting out blood. In short, the situation was terrible. Ink Sword Sect was littered with corpses. Previously, the people in the city had all gathered and rushed over, surrounding Ink Sword Sect. Both sides had erupted into an intense battle. There were countless casualties. The air was filled with a thick, suffocating smell of blood. Ink Sword Sect wants all of our lives. Duan Qingxuan was the first to react and he shouted. Everyone else reacted. That's right. If Ink Sword Sect had not insisted on chasing after Rongxiu and Chu Luiyue, if they had not used that terrifying and strange Shen formation, if they had not ignored everything and triggered Tianlei, how could Peach Blossom Cove's barrier have collapsed? Everyone would not have fallen into such a dangerous situation. Intense anger and hatred filled everyone's hearts. The people of Ink Sword Sect, who were already at the end of their rope, sensed the tense and cold atmosphere, and they could not help but feel afraid. At this time, they also understood that Mo Yun and the rest had no intention of coming back to help them. He didn't even care about their lives. The barrier has collapsed. We are completely trapped here. Those who reacted first and tried to escape the Peach Blossom Cove were all stopped by the intertwining spatial turbulence. There were even some who were mercilessly swallowed by the collapsing void and never made it out again. Hearing those people's cries of pain before they died, the people behind them couldn't help but feel scared. It's over. Peach Blossom Dock is completely finished. We're all going to die here today. Someone muttered with a pale face, his eyes filled with despair. Even if I die today, I'll drag the Black Sword Sect down with me. In the deathly silent crowd, someone suddenly yelled out in a stern voice. These words were like a falling star, instantly igniting a raging inferno. The battle between both sides became even more intense. The people of the Black Sword Sect were already at a disadvantage. Now that the crowd was enraged, they suffered a crushing defeat. Not only the Black Sword Sect, but the entire Peach Blossom Cove had fallen into chaos. On the streets, countless people were running back and forth in panic. All kinds of trampling, collisions, and killing occurred continuously. When they realized that the Peach Blossom Cove was in a life-and-death crisis, no one could remain calm. At first, there were still many people who tried to escape from the collapsing barrier. But after the first batch died, the people behind didn't dare to act rashly. They were running to live, not to die. More people had already chosen to give up in despair. In the courtyard of the Black Sword Sect, Duan Qingxuan raised his saber and swung it down. At his feet, the corpses of the Black Sword Sect people were strewn all over the ground. The sounds of killing continued in the surroundings. It was almost like hell on earth. Brother Duan, the barrier has collapsed. Shouldn't we think of a way to retreat? Someone asked anxiously. Many people looked over when they heard that. After this incident, many people had already subconsciously regarded Duan Qingxuan as their backbone. So now that something had happened, they also subconsciously asked for Duan Qingxuan's opinion. Duan Qingxuan swung his saber and stabbed a fleeing Black Sword Sect person to death. Warm blood splattered on his face. He raised his arm and wiped the blood away with his sleeve. Retreat? Oh, to where? His voice was very calm. Those who had stayed in the Peach Blossom Cove long enough would know how terrible the situation was. Although he had been on the Black Sword Sect's side, he wasn't completely ignorant of the situation outside. Those who had tried to escape had all failed. Among them there was no lack of powerful people. All of this proved that it was impossible for them to leave this place safely. Then we're just going to wait for death here? Yeah. We can't be completely helpless, right? There are so many people in the Peach Blossom Cove. Why don't we join forces? Maybe we'll have a chance? Seeing that Duan Qingxuan's attitude wasn't optimistic, many people panicked. For a moment, everyone was discussing. Although some of them were already prepared to die, most of them still hoped to survive safely. Duan Qingxuan suddenly raised his head and looked at the horizon. If someone can repair the barrier of the Peach Blossom Cove, maybe we'll have a chance to survive. Everyone fell into a dead silence. How could they not have thought of this? But the key was, this was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. The barrier of the Peach Blossom Cove wasn't man-made. It existed naturally. For thousands of years, the Peach Blossom Cove had never been occupied by anyone because of the existence of this barrier. Now that the barrier had collapsed, the void had collapsed, and the entire Peach Blossom Cove was in chaos. Who could repair the barrier? Everyone was just a mayfly at this moment. They couldn't even struggle. Who could save them? The sky was still collapsing and the ground was shaking violently. The space was shrinking and squeezing inwards. Everyone who was in the middle of it could already feel the suffocating pressure. More and more people couldn't withstand the pressure and gradually collapsed. Most of the people from the Black Sword sect had been killed. But what was the use of that? If the Peach Blossom Cove was destroyed, all of them would die here. Duan Qingxuan held the long saber in his hand tightly. His lips were pursed as he looked at the distant sky, as if he was waiting for something. Boom! A loud sound was suddenly heard. Then a faint blue flame shot up into the sky. It was a cluster of flames that suddenly surged out from under the crumbling mountain range. Mo Yun and the rest had seen this scene too many times before. So they didn't take it to heart. However, before they could react, the ravines on the ground of the mountain range exploded like a string of cannons. Boom! Boom! Demonic and crazy flames covered the sky and covered the earth. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1903. Everyone was stunned. This flame. Isn't it too much? On the mountain, in the forest, and in the valley. Even in every corner of the city, there were flames rushing out rapidly. The entire Peach Blossom Dock was engulfed in a sea of fire. The dark and gloomy sky was now illuminated by endless flames. The blue flames leaped and roasted the hearts of countless people. How could this be? How could this be? There is such a hidden danger under the Peach Blossom Dock? What are those flames? Countless questions lingered in the minds of the people, causing them to panic. The aura of this flame was tyrannical and extremely powerful. The Peach Blossom Dock's barrier had collapsed and no one could enter or leave. Once the flames spread out, none of them would be able to escape. The discussion gradually died down. Someone was sobbing. Everyone in the city was in complete despair. Now all they could do was wait for their deaths. Chi. A stream of light suddenly flew out from a cluster of flames. The stream of light drew a straight line in the sky and headed straight for Chu Luiyue. Many people saw this scene. What is that? I don't know. I didn't see it clearly. It seems like this is not the first time she has done this. Something seemed to fly out from the flames on the mountains outside the city. She seems to be looking for something in the flames. I remember now. The people of Black Sword sect were on guard against Lan Qingfeng. They seemed to be looking for something too. Everyone in Peach Blossom Dock knew what had happened during this period of time. Therefore, when someone reminded them, many people immediately connected the dots. With so many pairs of eyes watching, this conjecture could almost be completely confirmed. But, what was that thing that flew out from the flames? Countless people looked at Chu Luiyue. Of course Chu Luiyue knew what it was. When the stream of light flew over from below, she held her breath and held the black shield in her hand tightly. Crack. A familiar cracking sound was heard. Then a piece of rust peeled off from the shield. A corner of the secret text was gradually revealed. Buzz. The stream of light flew to Chu Luiyue. A thin blue crystal gently covered the area where the rust had peeled off. The sparkling light gradually shrouded it. The shield in her hand became heavier and heavier. However, this was just the beginning. The sound of air being torn apart came from all directions. Chu Luiyue hovered in the air and looked down. Countless flames had already ignited in the huge Peach Blossom Dock. Pieces of thin crystals flew out of it, wrapped in a brilliant light. The black shield seemed to be summoned by some kind of power and began to tremble. Chu Luiyue's hand was already numb, and her knuckles had turned white from using too much strength. However, she still used all her strength to hold the black shield firmly in her hands. Crisp cracking sounds could be heard. Pieces after pieces of rust peeled off the shield. At the same time, a terrifyingly powerful pressure. Puff. The blood in Chuliyue's body flowed rapidly, and her force was almost boiling. She suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood, and her face instantly turned incomparably pale. The bright red blood stain at the corner of her lips made her look even more haggard. The slight trembling of her body showed that she was under tremendous pressure at this moment. However, her black eyes were cold and gloomy. She was actually exceptionally calm. His eyes were burning with a raging fighting spirit. Countless streams of light came from all directions of the peach blossom dock. Bang! The golden armor on Chuliyue's body suddenly shattered under the impact of the surrounding spatial turbulence. Digression. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1904. Rong Xiu's expression froze, and a cold glint flashed across his eyes. He bent his long legs and was about to go forward when he saw the black shield in front of Chuliyue, which was already covered by a lustrous light, and he stopped in his tracks. At this moment it was useless for anyone to go over. She could only rely on herself. Seeing this, the other members of the 13U sect also looked worried. Master. Cini raised his hand and signaled for them to calm down. Big brother? This time, not only the 13U sect members, but even Sanson was a little hesitant. Master's situation didn't look too good, however. Cini's expression was calm and didn't allow any disobedience. Although they were anxious, they could only stay where they were obediently. Hiss. Sanson wanted to say something, but he suddenly frowned. Third brother, what's wrong? 13 hurriedly asked. Sanson waved his hand and his chubby face scrunched up. Nothing. It's just that small space is about to break. As soon as he said that, a stream of light flew up from the direction of Qingshui Cliff. That thin layer of blue was actually wrapped in a blazing flame and landed on the shallow spot where the rust had peeled off. Boom. Qingshui Cliff also started to collapse, as if it was being squeezed by the surrounding void turbulence. Large pieces of rock fell from the mountain. A loud sound was heard. Sanson's eyelids twitched violently, and he felt extremely pained. My baby. If that small space was destroyed, the loss would be immeasurable. As soon as he thought of this, his heart ached so much that it twitched. However, at this moment, Chuliyue, who was suspended in mid-air, suddenly raised his hand. A silver-red divine realm flew out like a heavenly river pouring down. In the blink of an eye, it covered Qingshui Cliff. The fine light flickered quietly, and it was especially eye-catching in this chaotic situation. Sanson's eyes instantly lit up. Master had actually personally taken action to protect that small space of his. Master is too good. Oh. Sanson's eyes were almost brimming with tears. First it was despair, then it was hope. This feeling of rising and falling was simply too satisfying. His little heart couldn't take it anymore, okay? Cini glanced at him indifferently and raised his eyebrows slightly, but he didn't say anything. So many mountains had been destroyed previously, but there was no movement on Master's side. However, just as there was movement on Qingshui Cliff, Master chose to attack without hesitation. This could only prove that Master was also very reluctant to part of that small space. However, seeing how agitated Sanson was, Cini decided to be kind and not expose her. Master's God's realm. Wu Yao stared at the divine domain that was slowly flowing like a waterfall as he muttered to himself. Fifth brother, you feel it too? Yu Jio nodded. I have the same feeling. When Qingshui of Qingshui. To cliff of the cliffs Qingjin. This was not the first time they had seen their master display his divine domain, but this time, it seemed like his aura and pressure were the strongest. God's domain can become stronger? 13 was at a loss. Don't exalted gods only have a chance to improve their god's realm after breaking through to venerable god? He was only a rank 7 warrior now and was still quite a distance away from exalted gods. Therefore he had heard a lot about exalted gods from Cini and the others. That's true for ordinary people, but our master isn't ordinary. Shifang sighed and then looked aggrieved. It's a pity that my vegetable garden? I'm afraid it's going to be destroyed again. On the first day he came to Peach Blossom Cove, he started to plant vegetables in the backyard excitedly. He thought that everything would go smoothly this time, but who knew that such a big thing would happen again? That was great. He couldn't eat the vegetables that he had painstakingly grown again. Shifang felt very sad when he thought of what had happened in the past few days. After a rough calculation, he realized that it had been a long time since he had a proper meal. Everyone looked at him. At this time, Everyone in Peach Blossom Cove was in danger and was afraid of dying here. Shifang was the only one who was still thinking about those dishes. However, they quickly retracted their gazes. Shifang had always been like this and they were already used to it. They looked at Chu Luiwei in unison. They didn't know if their master could really deal with the situation in front of them alone this time. This Shangguanyu? There's really a problem. The elders of the Nan family became even more flustered when they saw the flames that were ignited everywhere. If Peach Blossom Cove is completely destroyed, does she think she can survive alone? They thought that the people of Black Sword Sect were crazy enough, but they didn't expect her to be even crazier. They wanted to drag everyone down with them. Luo Yan's face was gloomy as he suddenly took out a red scroll. The scroll was shrouded in a layer of faint light. A heavy pressure was emitted from it. When the people around him saw the scroll, they were all shocked. Flowing Cloud Flying Diagram? The Flowing Cloud Flying Diagram was a venerable divine artifact and the treasure of the Nan family. Unlike other venerable divine artifacts that were used for killing and were extremely aggressive, this treasure only had one use. No matter who the holder was, they could use it to forcefully open up space and teleport the holder to another place in an extremely short amount of time. In layman's terms, this was a teleportation formation that could be carried around. Most people might think that this thing was very ordinary and nothing special. However, only those who truly understood its power would know how powerful this thing was. During ordinary battles, this flowing cloud flying diagram might not be of use, but at critical moments, it could save one's life. Just like now. The void of Peach Blossom Cove collapsed and the barrier collapsed. The energy of heaven and earth was almost completely out of control. Luo Yan and the others had already tried to leave, but they all failed. Now their only hope was the flowing cloud flying diagram. But wasn't this thing with young master? An elder said in confusion. Halfway through his sentence, he suddenly realized that he had said something wrong and hurriedly stopped. He looked at Luo Yan nervously. Luo Yan's face was expressionless. Before we set off, young master specially gave this thing to me for safekeeping. Originally, I wanted to return to the Nan family directly after killing Rong Xiu and Shangguanyu. The elders fell silent. They looked at each other with their eyes and nose. In fact, they didn't believe Luo Yan's words. The flowing cloud flying diagram had a very high status in the Nan family. It had always been safeguarded by the patriarch. This time, it was likely that the patriarch had secretly given the item to the eldest young master to increase his leverage. Even if he couldn't win, he could escape. Nan Yuxing should know the importance of this treasure. Why would he give it to Luo Yan for no reason? It was obvious that he could use it himself and it could even protect his own life. But at this time, these questions were obviously unsolvable. Swoosh. Luo Yan waved his hand and the flowing cloud flying diagram quickly unfolded. Digression, there's the last update at 7 o'clock. Sorry, I'm trying my best to adjust these few days in February so that I can resume the update as soon as possible. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 1905. A beam of brilliant light flew out from the crimson flowing clouds flying diagram. Then the light slowly spread out. Everywhere it passed, the space froze. The light rippled like water, and without anyone noticing, it had already connected to the void on the other side. From afar, it looked like a door with light flowing and floating quietly. Luo Yan made up his mind and walked forward. As long as he could use the flowing clouds flying diagram to leave this place, everything else would be easy. His speed was very fast. With a single step, he stepped into the swaying waves. The surrounding spatial turbulence seemed to have been isolated at this moment. Luo Yan pursed his lips and calmed down. The few elders standing behind him also became slightly excited when they saw the situation. The flowing clouds flying diagram was indeed worthy of its reputation. It seemed that they could really leave this place with this thing. However, at this moment, a sword aura suddenly broke through the air. Luo Yan knew that something was wrong and could only dodge. The half of his leg that had just stepped into the flowing clouds flying diagram was forced to withdraw again. A sharp and cold aura flashed in front of him. Luo Yan did not even have time to set up a barrier in front of him and a deep wound had already appeared on his face. A stinging pain came. Luo Yan's heart beat violently, almost jumping out of his chest. If his reaction had been half a second slower, then this sword chi might have sliced off his head. After the shock, there was a monstrous anger. He raised his head and looked at Chu Luiwei with hatred. She could not even protect herself, but she still had the mood to attack them. Shangguanyu, if you want to die, no one will stop you. Don't drag everyone down with you. Luo Yan shouted in a deep voice. The deep and cold voice spread far and wide in the sky. Chu Liyue's lips curled into an extremely cold smile. Luo Yan, I can't agree with your words. From the beginning to the end, I have never thought of dying. I just don't want to see the person who harmed me live well. You. Luo Yan was furious and was about to refute when a strange voice suddenly sounded in his ears. He turned his head and his eyes widened in shock. Unknowingly, a layer of reddish gold flames had covered the flowing cloud flying diagram. At this moment, it was burning brightly. Under the influence of the flames, the spreading layer of light gradually dimmed. That was the space leading to the exit, which was gradually being sealed. Luo Yan almost couldn't breathe. This woman is so ruthless. She was the one who caused the current situation, yet she didn't allow anyone to leave. She was really crazy. However, at the same time, a deeper question suddenly appeared in his mind. The flowing cloud flying diagram was a genuine venerable artifact. Logically speaking, Chu Liyue's strength alone should not have been able to deal any fatal damage to it. What's that? An elder behind him suddenly saw something and exclaimed in shock. Luo Yan followed his line of sight and saw that there seemed to be a transparent flame within the burning reddish gold flames. The power of the two layers of pressure was far beyond their imagination. This is the karmic fire of the heavenly square cauldron? Luo Yan was experienced and knowledgeable, so he quickly recognized the origin of the transparent flame. When he thought of this, his heart instantly sank. The flowing cloud flying diagram was actually one of the 10 great divine artifacts. However, compared to the heavenly square cauldron, it was still slightly inferior. After all, it was not used for battle. To put it bluntly, it was a trump card used to escape and save one's life. However, the heavenly square cauldron was different. At this moment, the power of both sides was intertwined, and the difference was immediately apparent. What is she trying to do? Luo Yan's heart was filled with hatred. However, Chu Liyue's attention did not seem to be on this side anymore. She kept the red cloud sword in her hand and held the black shield with both hands. Most of the rust on it had already peeled off, and the heavy pressure was almost suffocating her. The lustrous glow enveloped it, and the engravings on it were faintly discernible. Its weight was increasing at an unimaginable speed, so much so that Chu Liyue could no longer hold the shield with one hand. She had to use both hands. Vigorous force continuously surged out from her dantian and into her limbs and bones. The force was burning wildly. Fine beads of sweat continuously appeared on her full and smooth forehead. Her face grew paler and paler, and only her pair of dark eyes seemed to be burning with flames. The sky had almost completely collapsed and the ground was filled with ravines. Everywhere was filled with burning flames. At a glance it was like purgatory. Chu Liyue took a deep breath and held her breath. The buzzing sound from the black shield reverberated in her ears, almost causing the force in her body to boil. On the other side, the people of Ink Sword Sect were also in a terrible situation. Chu Liyue had forcefully mobilized the Tianlei to bombard them, and each strike was fatal. The people of Ink Sword Sect had already depleted their strength and spirit due to the blood sacrifice formation. How could they withstand such a terrifying attack now? After a series of attacks, more than half of Ink Sword Sect was dead or injured. The huge blood sacrifice formation also started to churn violently. Inch by inch, Mo Yun knew that there was nothing he could do. His body trembled, and his heart was filled with resentment and resentment. Boom. Finally, the blood sacrifice formation completely collapsed. The people of Ink Sword Sect standing at the edge could not escape in time, and were all swallowed by the violent blood chi and energy. Mo Yun also suffered a great impact and his body flew backward. Finally, his eyes were completely filled with a scarlet color. Just when everyone thought that he was done for, they suddenly saw him forcefully stabilize his body. The next moment he looked at Chu Liyue. "Sheng Guanyu, you forced me to do it this time." His cold and gloomy voice was filled with a violent and cold killing intent. At the same time, a totem suddenly flashed between his eyebrows. Chu Liyue looked up, and her eyes were instantly covered with a thick layer of frost. She could not be more familiar with that totem. Black Demon Cave. The so-called Ink Sword Sect clearly had an extremely close relationship with Black Demon Cave. Black Demon Cave sent you here? Mo Yun sneered. Mo Yun sneered, but he didn't reply as he quickly ran toward Chu Liyue. The surrounding heaven and earth energy suddenly gathered toward him like crazy. In just a few breaths' time, his strength had recovered to the peak of Supreme God. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1906. After letting go of his last line, Mo Yun no longer had any scruples as he frantically devoured the surrounding energy to forcefully raise his own strength. Seeing that Black Sword sect was unreliable, he could only rely on himself. Even though the sect leader had repeatedly warned him to be careful and not reveal his identity unless it was absolutely necessary. But now he had no other choice. If this went on, what awaited him was only death. Today, even if he were to die, he would definitely drag these people down with him. However, before Mo Yun could reach Chu Luiyue, he was stopped by someone. A tall and slender figure broke through the air and blocked Mo Yun's path in the blink of an eye. It was Rongxiu. Looking at that noble and devilish face, Mo Yun's heart was filled with hatred. Even at this time, this man's expression was still so calm and composed. It was as if there was nothing in this world that could make him nervous or fearful. The more he was like this, the more intense the emotions in Mo Yun's heart became. Based on what? Based on what, after this battle, those from Black Sword sect were either dead or injured while these people on the other side were not affected at all. Rongxiu, you are no match for me. Mo Yun shouted sternly. At this point, Mo Yun could see that Peach Blossom Cove was about to be completely destroyed. Everything that they had spent countless manpower and resources to prepare in the past 2 years would all turn to nothing. Even the countless cultivators here would have to pay with their lives. Mo Yun naturally did not care about the lives of those people, but he cared about himself. At this time he had already used a secret technique to forcefully recover and raise his strength. But in the face of the collapsing void and the rampant turbulence, he still felt helpless. And all of this was Chu Luiyue's fault. If she had not summoned so many flames, if she had not forcefully controlled the Tianlei, if she had not, at this time, Mo Yun had forgotten that the Nan family and Black Sword sect were the first to act. If they had not insisted on pursuing Chu Luiyue and the rest and paid a huge price for it, things would not have turned out this way. However, a person like him would never reflect on himself. Therefore he still blamed all his resentment on Chu Luiyue and the others. Rongxiu raised his eyebrows slightly. Oh? It seemed that the Black Demon Cave had not learned their lesson. His tone was light and there was even a slight smile on his lips. His entire person looked elegant, noble and elegant. However, when Mo Yun looked at that pair of eyes that were as deep as a pool, he suddenly quivered. He suddenly recalled a rumor from a few years ago. It was not accurate to say that it was a rumor because that incident had really happened. However, he had never personally experienced it and had only heard about it from others. It was said that a few years ago, Rongxiu had gone to the Black Demon Cave alone and directly attacked their lair. The Black Demon Cave suffered heavy losses in that battle. Not long after that incident, they even chose to live in seclusion. Although Mo Yun knew that the reason why the sect leader had made such a choice was not entirely because of Rongxiu, he had to admit that these matters had a significant impact on each other. Especially, at that time Rongxiu had indeed killed many people from the Black Demon Cave. Among them there was no lack of people of high status and power. Mo Yun happened to be out at that time and had just avoided this fierce battle. Therefore, many details about that battle were heard from his fellow sect members one after another. This matter was almost a taboo in the Black Demon Cave. Many people were still afraid when they mentioned the scene of that man killing his way into the Black Demon Cave alone. Mo Yun had not seen Rongxiu with his own eyes. Otherwise he would not have known the identities of Rongxiu and Chu Luiyue only after the Nan family came to interrogate him. Because he had not personally experienced it, he had always maintained some doubts about these claims. Even after knowing Rongxiu's identity, his first thought was to kill him. Until now, he and Rongxiu faced each other face to face. When he met the man's cold and indifferent eyes, he suddenly remembered all the things he had heard before. Rongxiu, he really had great strength. Mo Yun's throat was a little tight. He was not stupid. On the contrary, in most cases he was very astute and intelligent. Otherwise, the higher-ups would not have sent him here to establish the Black Sword sect and be in charge of many things here. He intuitively felt a fatal danger. And this danger came from Rongxiu. Rongxiu gently raised his wrist, and a cluster of golden flames gushed out from his palm, scorching, burning. At the same time, the incomparably wild energy in the surroundings began to obediently surge towards his flames. Including the energy that was rushing towards Mo Yun, it was forcibly snatched away halfway. Mo Yun's face was ashen, but his heart was uneasy. From this move alone, he could tell that Rongxiu's strength was not inferior to his, and was even stronger. Could not go head-to-head with Rongxiu. Mo Yun made a prompt decision, and with a sidestep he planned to go around Rongxiu and attack Chu Luiyue first. However, how would Rongxiu give him this chance? Swoosh. His slender and well-proportioned fingers waved gently. The incomparably bright golden flames transformed into a long whip, and went straight towards Mo Yun. Before Mo Yun could escape, he felt a golden light flash in front of his eyes. Then a burning pain came from his ankle. He looked down in panic and saw that one of his calves had been tightly bound by the flames. The blazing flames burned fiercely, and in the blink of an eye, his trousers had turned into ashes. The intense burning pain came quickly. Mo Yun's face turned pale. He was a god expert and ordinary flames could not get close to him. But Rong Xiu's fire was also very powerful. Wrapping around his ankle was not the most important thing. What made Mo Yun's heart tremble the most was that after the flame wrapped around him, the force in his body seemed to have been suppressed and sealed by some kind of power. It could not be mobilized at all. Without being able to use force, no matter how powerful a cultivator was, he could not unleash his strength. Mo Yun was shocked and furious. Wasn't Rong Xiu also a god like him? But why was the difference in strength between the two of them so great? In comparison, Rong Xiu could practically crush him easily. Just as Mo Yun was thinking about this question, Rong Xiu had already lashed out with his whip. Smack! Mo Yun's body flew out uncontrollably. He crashed heavily on a mountain peak. Bam! Rumble. Accompanied by these two sounds, that mountain peak actually collapsed directly after receiving this powerful impact. Countless huge rocks rolled down. Mo Yun's body was drowned in it very quickly. Rong Xiu's eyes were cold. Don't delay my violators, this is the consequence. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1907. A cold and deep voice spread between heaven and earth, landing clearly in everyone's ears. The people of Black Sword Sect were basically all dead. As for the people of Nan family, after hearing this, they felt that it was extremely ear-piercing. These words were clearly meant for them to hear. It was fine if Rong Xiu did not make a move, but once he did, he used a killing move right away. He was killing the chicken to warn the monkey. Luo Yan was filled with rage as he looked at the flowing cloud flying diagram that was still burning in front of him. The flowing cloud flying diagram was a venerable divine weapon and would not be damaged easily. Therefore he was not worried that Chu Liuyue's flames would destroy it. However, he knew very well that with Chu Liuyue's interference, they would definitely not be able to use the flowing cloud flying diagram to leave this place. The space in all directions was crazily squeezing towards the center. If this continued, the entire Peach Blossom dock would completely collapse before long. I'm afraid we won't be able to get out. The expressions of the elders turned extremely ugly. Before they came, they had never expected things to develop to this stage. Putting aside Nan Yuxing's death, all of them would probably be buried here as well. Even Mo Yun is not a match for Rong Xiu This was not to say that they were weaker than Mo Yun. It was just that when Mo Yun attacked earlier, the strength that he displayed was already extremely strong. Moreover, he went with great determination at that time, almost cutting off all means of retreat. Even so, he only managed to exchange one move with Rong Xiu. How good would the situation be for the rest of them? I think Rong Xiu's strength has clearly surpassed that of an ordinary venerable god. An elder gritted his teeth and said. But his aura is indeed that of a venerable god, another elder said hesitantly. Perhaps, he borrowed some external power? The elders had different opinions. However, they also knew that it was useless even if they knew this at this time. Luo Yan suddenly raised his head and looked at the sky. Inch by inch, the ground collapsed and large black holes spread out. It was like a giant beast opening its bloody mouth to devour everything. Countless surging dark clouds had already been devoured by now. Only a few strands of Tianlei were still wandering around. It was Tianlei who had been summoned by the blood sacrifice array. Before all of them landed, the blood sacrifice array had already collapsed. All that was left were the Tianlei, which wandered about in the sky uncontrollably. At this moment, as if affected by the spatial compression, the Tianlei began to converge towards the center. What was even more surprising was that they seemed to be merging with each other. The most important thing was that they were gathered in the air above Chu Liuyue's head. Looking at this scene, Luo Yan suddenly muttered. So what if you're a venerable god? Can he compete with the heavenly Tao? The elders were stunned when they heard this. Heavenly Tao. What did he mean by that? They looked at each other and subconsciously followed Luo Yan's line of sight. The wind howled and the energy was rampant. Everything looked the same. However, Tianlei in the sky was converging and merging. A dazzling light suddenly surged out from within. The elders all sucked in a breath of cold air. That was God-destroying tribulation? As the name suggested, the God-destroying tribulation was a heavenly tribulation used to destroy a venerable god. Legend had it that the God-destroying tribulation was dazzling and was born from the heavenly Tao. It was extremely powerful. Whenever it descended, it would be a calamity that could destroy the world. However, the God-destroying tribulation was extremely rare. In the world of divine ruins, there might not be a single person who could summon it in 1,000 years. Therefore, most people had only heard of it in rumors and did not have a deep understanding of it. In their opinion, this was indeed a phenomenon that only existed in ancient books. Therefore, when this God-destroying tribulation appeared, even Luo Yan looked at it for a long time before he dared to confirm it. This was the legendary God-destroying tribulation. Moreover, the person who was going to destroy it was Chu Luiyue. It's really the God-destroying tribulation. The elders were all dumbfounded, their faces filled with shock. But that's not right. Isn't the God-destroying tribulation something that only venerable gods can summon? Shengguanyu is the venerable god. How could it be Rong Xiu who summoned it? No, it's Shengguanyu. Can't you see that the God-destroying tribulation is gathering above her head? Heavens! Is this really the God-destroying tribulation coming for her? How could a mere venerable god? Could it be because of the mountain fire? The Nan family was not the only one who was puzzled. At the same time, countless cultivators who were watching the situation in Peach Blossom Dock were also stunned. Some of them had sharp eyes and immediately recognized that it was the God-destroying tribulation. The news quickly spread among the crowd. Everyone was stunned on the spot. They did not expect that Chu Luiyue would summon a God-destroying tribulation at such a critical moment. This was one disaster after another. It's over. It's completely over this time. Countless people were filled with despair and had already given up. Mo Yun struggled out of the pile of rocks. His body was already covered in wounds. He did not have time to be resentful. He looked up at the sky and saw the God-destroying tribulation that was gathering. His eyes widened and his body trembled. Once the deity-destroying tribulation descended, all of them would most likely die. He clenched his teeth, and a look of determination flashed in his eyes. Then a cloud of black mist suddenly spread out from his body. The totem between his eyebrows became brighter and weirder. A vast and mighty aura descended from the sky. Chu Luiyue looked up. The gorgeous Tianlei was still gathering power, and it would descend at any time to judge her. She clenched the black gambling token in her hand. What was this? How could it summon the God-destroying tribulation? Boom. Just as this thought flashed through her mind, the God-destroying tribulation had already descended. The biting cold aura instantly cut countless wounds on Chu Luiyue's body. However, at this moment, the sound of a zither rang out from within her body. Digression, 6 o'clock mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1908. Chu Luiyue felt that there were two forces fighting each other inside and outside her body. And her physical body was the battlefield. The sound of the zither rang out, an endless surging force rushed out, quickly pouring into her limbs and bones, nourishing her injuries. Those bloody wounds began to heal and scab at an astonishing speed. But as the pressure of the God-destroying tribulation continued to increase, some bloody wounds ruptured. One side was destroying and the other side was repairing. Chu Luiyue's body endured these two forces at the same time, and soon became a bloody person. She wore a red dress and dark red blood gushed out from her body, quickly disappearing on her clothes. If one didn't look carefully, one wouldn't be able to see anything. Only her increasingly pale face showed what kind of terrible torture she was suffering at this moment. Chu Luiyue's two hands had long lost feeling. At this moment, she was just relying on the last bit of willpower to barely hold on, holding the black shield in her hand tightly. The rust on it had almost completely peeled off. Countless faint blue crystals covered it. A faint glow almost enveloped the entire shield. The secret text engraved on it was faintly discernible. Sensing this movement, Rong Xiu looked up. When he saw the gorgeous and brilliant God-destroying tribulation appear, he narrowed his eyes slightly, and a look of deep thought flashed across his eyes. It actually, directly summoned the God-destroying tribulation. He put one hand behind his back and gently curled up, but his feet didn't move. From the looks of it, he was planning to wait and see. Big brother, that's the God-destroying tribulation? Sanson widened her small eyes in shock and asked in disbelief. Tani nodded. Although it was his first time seeing it, but, with this appearance and state, there was no doubt that it was the god-destroying tribulation. Hiss, seeing his affirmative nod, Sanson sucked in a breath of cold air. But isn't Master just a high god now? How can he summon the god-destroying tribulation? Wu Yao and the others also looked over nervously. Previously, their big brother had told them to wait patiently, and they had done so. But now, they really couldn't calm down. God-destroying tribulation. This was because the heavenly Tao had sensed a threat and wanted to annihilate him. Even if one used their toes to think, they would know how terrifying this was. No matter how powerful Master was, his own realm was still there. Rumor has it that only 10 to 20% of the god annihilation tribulations can safely pass through them. Master is a high deity. What should we do? Sun Yi's brows quickly furrowed, but he quickly relaxed. He paused for a moment before saying, the deity annihilation tribulation is indeed dangerous. However, those who can pass the deity annihilation tribulation will all become powerful figures in the world. This was an opportunity that thousands of cultivators could only dream of in their entire lives. Master was still a high deity, but he was able to summon the deity annihilation tribulation. This showed how strong his potential was. For Master to encounter such an opportunity, we should be happy for Master. The remaining people smiled bitterly. They naturally understood what Sun Yi was saying. But the key point was, what if Master couldn't get through it? One had to know that even the most powerful supreme gods might not be able to survive the god annihilation tribulation, let alone Master. It wasn't that they didn't believe in their Master's strength, it was just, this matter was too outrageous. Even the 13U sect, who had always thought highly of their Master, panicked at this moment. They really didn't dare to make this bet. Little Hachi suddenly stretched. Since Big Brother has said so, let's not worry for nothing. Besides, if Master really can't get through it, we can just go with him. What's there to be conflicted about? In any case, she was very open-minded. Her life was Master's. As long as Master was here, she would be here. If something happened to Master, she would follow without hesitation. These words didn't sound good. Could even be said that they were very depressing. However, the miraculous thing was that after hearing Little Hachi's words, the remaining people were instantly less nervous. Made sense. The worst outcome was nothing more than this. It wasn't like they hadn't experienced it before. There was nothing to be afraid of if the same thing happened again. Besides, Master had many trump cards. Perhaps, he could really win? Chu Luiyue didn't know what everyone was thinking. At this moment, all her attention was placed on the black shield in front of her and the god-destroying tribulation above it. Under the pincer attack from both sides, she felt as if her whole body was being torn apart. Terrifying energy rushed back and forth. The pressure of the god-destroying tribulation was getting heavier and heavier. The zither music in her body was also getting more and more desolate. Chu Luiyue's ears were filled with a roar. She could no longer hear any sound from the outside world. Faint luster kept flickering in front of her eyes. The weight on both of her hands kept increasing. She could only clench her teeth and stare. Crack. Finally. The last piece of rust on the black shield was peeled off. Then the last piece of faint blue crystal flew out from the city below. It gently covered it. At this moment, the entire Peach Blossom Dock was in a mess. Countless faint blue flames were burning all over the Peach Blossom Dock. The entire city had almost turned into a sea of fire. Chu Luiyue stood in midair. She could even feel the burning aura in the air. When the last piece of thin crystal flew over and covered it perfectly, Chu Luiyue could clearly hear a chanting sound that seemed to come from an ancient time and space. Her mind was shocked. Then the secret text on the entire black shield finally appeared completely. At the same time, all the Tianlei in the sky had gathered. It condensed into an incomparably gorgeous god-destroying tribulation. When the luster on the black shield gradually dissipated, the god-destroying tribulation also crashed down. The target was Chu Luiyue. Digression. At about 6:30 p.m. mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1909. Reddish gold flames instantly ignited around Chu Luiyue. However, the god-destroying tribulation was extremely fast. In just an instant, Chu Luiyue's figure was devoured. Boom. Endless resplendent streams of light shot out in all directions. Even the silver-red god realm that Chu Luiyue displayed at the start was affected as well, and it was instantly scattered into pieces. Below, the mountain range that was already in a mess started to collapse again at a visible speed. In the blink of an eye, it was razed to the ground. Sun Yi quickly set up a green barrier in front of him and shouted at the same time. Retreat. Hearing his order, the 13 U guards instinctively retreated. Even so, they still suffered a great impact. The colorful streams of light flew over and collided with the barrier that Sun-yi had set up. They silently devoured each other and killed each other crazily. Sun-yi was the first to bear the brunt. His chest shook and blood seeped out of the corner of his mouth. Big brother? Sanson and the others were shocked. In their impression, Big Brother was almost invincible. He had never been in such a sorry state. However, this was merely the aftermath of the God-destroying tribulation. Their master, who was facing the full-force attack of the God-destroying tribulation, was in even more danger. Sun-yi forcefully swallowed the taste of blood that surged up his mouth. Without stopping, he continued to lead everyone in retreat. Danger. Almost at the same time, Luo Yan and the others on the other side also sensed that something was wrong. Luo Yan shouted and immediately retreated. However, an elder chose to go forward. Flowing cloud flying diagram. This was the treasure of the Nan family. If it was lost, however, just as his hand touched the burning flowing cloud flying diagram, a colorful stream of light suddenly flew behind him. Luo Yan and the others' expressions changed. Dodge. That elder also felt a gust of cold wind coming from behind him. He knew that something was wrong and immediately grabbed the flowing cloud flying diagram and fled. However, it was still too late. That stream of light was simply too fast. He had just taken a step when the colorful stream of light behind him directly pierced through his chest. Blood splattered everywhere. The warm and sweet blood even splashed onto the faces and bodies of Luo Yan and the others. Their hearts were filled with shock and they were all stunned. The elder threw out the flowing cloud flying diagram with great difficulty, then spat out 2 words with great difficulty. Hurry. Go. Luo Yan subconsciously borrowed the flowing cloud flying diagram. The scarlet gold flames and the transparent flames intertwined and enveloped him. It was boiling hot to the touch. Fortunately, the flowing cloud flying diagram was also one of the 10 great saint artifacts. Although the flames could destroy the spatial tunnel it created, it would not cause fatal damage to the diagram itself. Furthermore, Luo Yan himself was a god. With a thought, a layer of silver armor quickly covered his arm. He clenched the flowing cloud flying diagram tightly in his hand and retreated at full speed at the same time. The other elders didn't have time to say anything and could only follow closely behind. By the time they managed to dodge the attack of the colorful light, they had already flown quite a distance away. After making sure that he had avoided the fatal threat, Luo Yan stopped and looked back again. He saw the body of the elder from the Nan clan explode. A terrifying energy wave came crashing down, instantly crushing him into dust. His body and soul were destroyed. He didn't even have time to cry out in pain. Luo Yan's heart was beating violently, the blood in his body seemed to be boiling, and his temples were throbbing. The scene in front of him had a huge impact on him. If they were a step too late just now, then the consequences were simply unimaginable. Luo Yan had been a god for many years. It had been too long since he felt such a fatal threat of death. The 3 elders standing beside him were all stunned at this time. A god powerhouse was gone just like that? The power of the god-destroying tribulation was so terrifying. Even a scattered aftershock had such a terrifying power, then. Chu Luiyue, who was at the center and endured the most pressure of the god-destroying tribulation, would die without a doubt. Mo Yun was originally hiding in a pile of rocks, planning to wait for an opportunity to move. However, the arrival of the god-destroying tribulation completely shattered all his plans. The rocks shook, the earth shook, and the mountains shook. The thick fog on his body had already covered more than half of his body. However, the power of this god-destroying tribulation was too strong. It was already difficult for him to avoid these aftershock attacks, let alone other things. If this continued, he was afraid that he would really die here silently. Mo Yun was unwilling in his heart. The totem between his brows suddenly became even brighter. The thick color of blood filled his eyes. A smell of a corpse suddenly emitted from his body. His eyes also gradually became ice-cold and bloodthirsty. However, right at this time, a golden flame suddenly flew over. Mo Yun suddenly realized something and raised his head to look. That ball of golden flame already flew in front of him. Just as he was planning to dodge, that flame actually directly exploded in front of him. Boom. For a moment, sparks scattered. In a blink of an eye, it completely wrapped Mo Yun. Just as he was about to struggle and escape, a thick blackness suddenly gushed out from that golden flame. The cold and ruthless aura immediately made Mo Yun open his eyes wide in shock. This was swish. Without waiting for him to open his mouth, That blackness already swallowed him. Mo Yun was dead. The golden flame followed closely and spread up. From the outside, no one detected any abnormality. Very soon the flame dissipated and a wind blew over. It raised a handful of flying ashes. No one would have known that the once glorious Mo Yun, the deputy sect leader of Mo Sword Sect, actually died silently in such a way. In fact, at this moment no one cared about him anymore. Everyone's attention was on Chu Luiyue. Countless pairs of eyes were looking at that bright and gorgeous ball of flame in midair. Who could withstand the descent of the God-destroying tribulation? The space was still constantly collapsing. The world was dark. They were very clear that when this ball of flame dissipated, everything would be over. And Chu Luiyue, what a pity. All of us are going to be buried with her. In the Peach Blossom Cove, someone sighed dejectedly. In the crowd, Duan Qingxuan frowned and was about to explain when he suddenly saw something and suddenly opened his eyes wide. What is that? When everyone heard that, they all subconsciously looked over. They saw that in that dazzling ball of flame, something suddenly flew out. Someone murmured with uncertainty, "It seems to be a stone?" Digression, accumulating power. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1910. It was indeed a piece of rock. It was about the size of a fist and was grayish-white in color. It rolled out of the brilliant flame as if someone had accidentally thrown it out. Many people were stunned. The reason for that was because the appearance of this stone in such a situation was truly untimely. Why would such a thing appear out of nowhere? But soon the second stone also rolled out shakily from within. At this moment, the raging power of the God-destroying tribulation had completely messed up the surrounding space. Countless crazy spatial turbulences intertwined as if they were going to tear everything apart. However, the two stones didn't seem to be affected by the fluctuation at all. They just rolled away. At first glance, it was no different from being on flat ground. Before the crowd could react, the third rock appeared and went in another direction. At this moment, time seemed to flow extremely slowly. Countless pairs of eyes were fixed on the strange scene in the sky. With the ball of flame as the center, more and more rocks rolled out and scattered in all directions. Under the brilliant light, these rocks looked ordinary. Because of this, their appearance was extremely strange. These rocks, rushed out of the God-destroying tribulation's power. Why aren't they broken? Someone muttered in a low voice. Many people were stunned when they heard this. That's right. When the God-destroying tribulation descended, even the mountain peaks below collapsed one after another and were completely destroyed. Why were these small rocks not affected at all? No, aren't you curious about where these stones came from? Of course, they could not have come from the God-destroying tribulation. Then the only explanation was, Chu Luiyue. These rocks must be hers. But this was even more puzzling. She was trapped in the God-destroying tribulation and no one knew if she was dead or alive. How could she have the time to throw these rocks out? No. There seems to be something coming out of those rocks. His exclamation was like a stone thrown into a calm lake, causing ripples to form on the surface of the water. Everyone looked over. Soon the crowd was noisy again. It seems to be true. What's that blue thing? Hey, the one beside it is green. Why do these rocks seem to be different? With the passage of time, the originally gray, unremarkable, and even somewhat ugly stones began to glow with all sorts of colors. Although they could not be compared to the brilliant light of the God-destroying tribulation, they were still quite dazzling when scattered. The void collapsed and there were black holes everywhere. The appearance of these streams of light were like stars that lit up the darkness. Suddenly, someone exclaimed in shock. Those don't seem to be ordinary rocks. Those streams of light. Those streams of light are God domains. As soon as he said this, everyone was shocked. They were actually very familiar with the words God domains. After all, those who could survive in the Peach Blossom Cove were mostly divine-level experts. When they fought with each other, they had more or less seen the God domains of other cultivators. But at this time, for them to connect these stones with the divine realm was still far beyond their imagination. God domain? How is that? Only deity-rank powerhouses could condense a deity domain. No matter how powerful these stones were, they were also dead objects. How could he display his divine domain? Could it be that you were too scared and made a mistake? There were different opinions. However, everyone obviously did not believe this. It was not that they had any opinions about the person who said this, but the matter itself was very ridiculous in their eyes. Therefore they instinctively chose to refute. No. Look carefully. That really looks like a god domain. Why would I lie to you at this time? Seeing that everyone did not believe him, the person was a little anxious. He raised his finger and pointed at the rocks that were scattered in the sky. Look for yourselves. If those streams of light are not god domains, what are they? Under his repeated pleading, some people raised their heads to look at him in disbelief. At this time, those rocks were basically surrounded by various streams of light. Looking from below, balls of light were flickering. The light was not dazzling, but it seemed to be wrapped in a vast aura. Some people's expressions changed. This aura, it was indeed a god domain. It really seems to be. Those who had objected solemnly just now were stunned and stammered. The noisy crowd quickly quieted down. This was because the impact of this matter was too great for them. After a while, someone muttered in a low voice, "How is this possible? Am I too inexperienced? Is there really a god domain in this world without cultivators? No, it's not your problem. I'm afraid that in the entire divine ruins, there has never been such a situation. It seems that Peach Blossom Dock is really finished. A high god expert summoned a god-destroying tribulation, and the broken rocks have god domains. This is crazy. This is crazy." Too many unbelievable things had happened, so much so that people began to doubt whether everything in front of them was real or just an illusion. However, while most people were shocked and lost, there were still a few people who maintained their last bit of rationality. A somewhat childish voice suddenly came from the crowd. "Daddy, these rocks are scattered like this, like. The person who spoke was a little girl who was about 7 or 8 years old. She looked up with a sincere expression, but there was a trace of doubt in her eyes. She felt that this scene was somewhat familiar, but she could not recall it. When Duan Qingxuan, who was standing not far away, heard this, a white light suddenly flashed in his mind. Xian formation. After his reminder, the little girl finally revealed a look of realization. Yes, it is like a Xian formation. Daddy, look, it is very similar to the Xian formations you showed me before. At the age of 7 or 8, she had already started cultivating, but she still maintained the most honest view of everything. When she saw the scattered rocks in the sky, she felt that they were very familiar. However, the middle-aged man who was being pulled by her did not have the heart to care about this. He just treated it as his child's babbling. Those rocks had already displayed god domains, which was strange enough, and now she was saying that they had constructed a Xian formation. It was obvious that it was impossible. He did not say anything, but he held his daughter in his arms with heartache. His poor child was still so young, and this time, however, Duan Qingxuan stared at the sky and said word by word, "It is not like a Xian formation. It is a Xian formation." Every word was sonorous and forceful. Many people, including the middle-aged man, subconsciously raised their heads to look at the sky. In the sky, countless rocks were scattered around the ball of light of the god-destroying tribulation. At first glance it was a mess. However, if one observed carefully, they would find that there was indeed some kind of pattern in the arrangement of these rocks. The horizontal and vertical lines intertwined with each other, but they were perfectly integrated. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1911. There were god domains wrapped around those stones. At this moment, as if they were being summoned by some kind of power, these god domains surged out from the dusty stones and connected with each other. The dots connected to form a line. The lines connected to form a surface. Above the black sky, these seemingly messy and scattered divine domains began to silently condense. Individually, none of the god domains unleashed by these stones could be considered powerful. In fact, after 10,000 years, these powerful god domains, which once belonged to countless powerful cultivators, were only left with the last remnants of power. These powers might be insignificant. These god domains might not be a concern. However, when they gathered together, the layers of power accumulated and accumulated into a shockingly vast pressure. The sky collapsed, and the entire Peach Blossom Dock fell into a long night. However, there were still stars twinkling in the night sky, emitting a lustrous glow. The god domains of countless stones connected with each other, forming a brilliant and flexible net. The most dazzling thing was the center of the net, which was a ball of brilliant and gorgeous light. It was as if a breeze was blowing, gently lifting up this huge net. In an instant, the sound of surging tides could be heard. Whoosh, abundant heaven and earth energy surged along with it. Even the huge ball of light seemed to be affected. It swayed back and forth in the huge net that rose and fell. Everyone in Peach Blossom Dock looked at this scene in a daze. That was, someone shook the god-destroying tribulation? However, at this moment, who else could do this other than Chu Luiyue, who was in the middle of it? This absurd and crazy thought surged in the minds of countless people, but they forcefully suppressed it. Impossible. The terrifying energy of the god-destroying tribulation was something that even the Nan family's venerable god expert could not resist. Let alone Chu Luiyue, who was merely a god expert. Countless people held their breaths. The entire peach blossom dock seemed to have quieted down. At this moment, every pair of eyes was looking at that brilliant ball of light. It swayed gently, and the power on it seemed to be constantly being reduced. The surrounding god domains were madly devouring its power. Streams of light of various colors flew and surged rapidly in the night sky, as if they were weaving a beautiful piece of silk. She's crazy? How dare she snatch the power of the god-destroying tribulation? Luo Yin finally could not help but exclaim in shock. He, who had always kept a poker face, couldn't control himself at this moment. His face was full of shock. Previously, when they had obtained the flowing cloud flying diagram, they had already retreated far away. However, from where he stood, he could still clearly see the situation on Chu Luiyue's side. However, at this moment, no one was in the mood to admire this magnificent and shocking scene. Because they were very clear that once this flowing light fell like a waterfall, the entire Peach Blossom Dock City would be destroyed. And they, too, would cease to exist. The atmosphere was cold and stagnant. Father, are we going to die? The little girl, who was quite excited about her discovery, finally realized that something was wrong and asked timidly. Her father hugged her tightly. Darling, don't be afraid. Father is here. Duan Qingxuan's heart seemed to be tightly gripped by something and he couldn't breathe. Hurried footsteps suddenly came from behind him. He turned back to look. The person who came was Yan Qing. Yan? Duan Qingxuan was about to speak when he saw Yan Qing shake his head slightly. And his gaze was fixed on the sky. Duan Qingxuan seemed to have sensed something and turned his head to look again. A tall and slender white figure had appeared in front of the stream of light without anyone noticing. Rong Xiu crossed his hands in front of him and two balls of flames were burning in the depths of his deep phoenix eyes. One was bright gold. The other was dark. A huge golden bounded domain suddenly appeared. It seemed that it had blocked all the flowing light. The torrent didn't stop and rushed forward. Just as the two forces were about to collide, a clear voice suddenly came. Stop. Along with this voice, the endless colorful flowing light that was surging forward actually stopped in front of the golden bounded domain. Everyone was stunned and subconsciously looked towards the direction of the voice. They saw an exquisite figure standing in the air. She held a shield in front of her with both hands. Everyone couldn't see her face and could only see a head of black hair fluttering in the wind. On the shield there was a glimmer of light. Clang. She suddenly smashed the shield down heavily. Beneath her feet, the 3,000 divine domains suddenly moved. It was as if a mighty pressure from ancient times was surging in all directions. Digression? It took a lot of energy and effort to write this part, but I finally finished it. Updated at 6:00 p.m. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1912. The gorgeous flowing light that almost covered the entire sky finally began to collapse inch by inch after a short pause. The god-destroying tribulation shattered into countless pieces of starlight and fell into the 3,000 god domains that filled the sky. It was like a river of stars splashing down, and countless brilliant lights flew up. The strong wind blew and the woman's red dress fluttered. All kinds of beautiful and brilliant lights flickered around her, but they were not as bright as her. The scene seemed to be frozen, but she was 1,000 times more intense than the faint ink. All of a sudden, it seemed to give people an illusion. The sky fell and the earth cracked and she was the only god. Countless people looked up with dazed expressions, and this scene was forever engraved in their hearts. No matter how much time had passed, there would always be people who would remember that there was once a woman who single-handedly turned the tide in such a dangerous situation. She was the one who made the flowing light flow backward. She was the one who made the rushing flow backward. She was the one who truly relied on her mortal body to withstand the god-destroying tribulation. The thick smell of blood spread between her lips and teeth. Her heart was beating violently, as if it would jump out of her chest at any time. Her head was throbbing with pain and her last string was pulled tight. A numb and dull pain came from her arms. Sticky dark red blood seeped out from her hands. Chu Luiyue took a deep breath and forced herself to swallow this breath. Clang. There seemed to be an invisible hand that was plucking the delicate strings in her body. The sound of the zither was bleak and solemn, but it quickly woke her up. She raised her eyes and looked around. What entered her eyes was a sea of brilliant light. The God-destroying tribulation had collapsed, forming countless brilliant flowing lights that were rushing back and forth in the sky above her. And beneath her feet were the 3,000 God domains that were formed by the stones. Chu Luiyue was moved and she sighed softly. The God domains of the gods really can't be underestimated. In the beginning she really had no other way. She finally chose to try this method out of helplessness. She did not dare to have any hope in her heart. After all, when she brought these stones back from the God-destroying mound, they did not seem to be particularly powerful. Although each stone contained a God domain, they were not considered powerful. At that time, Chu Luiyue also felt that they were too clingy. He couldn't persuade them otherwise, so he chose to take them away. Although these stones were occasionally mischievous, most of the time they were very gentle and obedient. Chu Luiyue had never thought that the first time he used them to construct a profound formation, it would erupt with such a powerful and unparalleled power. What surprised her the most was that after these divine domains fused with each other, the surging battle intent increased exponentially. She could even feel an unprecedented and indestructible determination from it. It was a madness and persistence that she had never felt before. It was an astonishing will that had been passed down from the battlefield 10,000 years ago. For a moment, Chu Luiyue even thought that it was a God-destroying tribulation. Even if it was the sky, they could completely overturn it. At this moment, a colorful stream of light suddenly flew over. The 13th Yu-Guard, who had just calmed down, felt her heart tighten again when she saw this. "Master, be careful." Chu Luiyue shook her head lightly, indicating that they didn't need to worry. She didn't feel any threat from that stream of light. On the contrary, she even felt a faint sense of inspiration. This feeling was very subtle and indescribable. However, she knew that it wouldn't hurt her. Soon, that stream of light flew in front of her. As if subconsciously, Chu Luiyue stretched out a hand. Her hand had suffered a great amount of pressure when she used the shield to block the God-destroying tribulation. At this moment, it was already badly mutilated. Rong Xiu's phoenix eyes darkened slightly. A trace of coldness flashed across his eyes, but it disappeared in an instant. Immediately after, that stream of light flew into Chu Luiyue's hand. The moment it touched her body, that stream of light quickly condensed into a translucent and gorgeous soft armor that gently covered the back of her hand. That thing was only half the size of a palm. Its shape was irregular, but it was extremely exquisite and luxurious. A faint pressure was emitted from it. Chu Luiyue was slightly shocked. Soon, the second stream of light flew in and stuck tightly to the first piece of the gorgeous soft armor. At the same time, the wound that was covered by the soft armor began to heal at an astonishing speed. In the blink of an eye, that shocking wound quickly healed and formed a scab. Soon that layer of shallow scar peeled off bit by bit. The wound healed as if it was never there. It didn't look like she had been injured at all. This time even Chu Luiyue was shocked. She was a celestial physician. She knew all too well how difficult it was to heal such an injury to its original state. Moreover, it was done in such a short time. More and more streams of light were flying toward her. Just as Chu Luiyue was filled with doubts, a wave suddenly came from her dantian. Chu Luiyue looked over and was shocked to find that a small illusory figure had appeared in her body without her noticing. It was right under the zither score that had transformed into water droplets. The figure was transparent, but its shape and appearance were exactly the same as Chu Luiyue's. At this moment, the right hand of the transparent figure was shining with a gorgeous light. It was exactly the same as the soft armor that covered Chu Luiyue's body. Chu Luiyue was stunned for a moment, and a bold idea suddenly came to her mind. This was a divine body? As soon as this idea came to her mind, it immediately set off huge waves in Chu Luiyue's heart. A few years ago, when she came to the Divine Ruins world, although she was in the limelight at Lingxiao College, she hadn't cultivated a divine body at that time. After breaking through to the high god level, she smoothly condensed a godly domain. However, a divine body was different from a godly domain. One had to know that not every high god could cultivate a divine body. There were all kinds of divine bodies in the world. In Lingxiao College, Chu Luiyue had read countless books on cultivating a divine body. She had tried to do it more than once. However, she didn't know why she couldn't succeed. She was extremely talented on the path of cultivation. She had never encountered any obstacles along the way. It wasn't until she started to cultivate her divine body that she encountered failure after failure. She was Nan Su Huai's only disciple, and all the methods of cultivating a divine body that she had seen and learned were absolutely outstanding. However, no matter which method she tried, she couldn't succeed. In the end, even Nan Su Hui couldn't stand it anymore. At that time, he said that since this was the case, it meant that she had a divine body that should belong to her. Only when the opportunity came could she cultivate it. As for the other divine bodies, she wasn't fated to be with them, so there was no need to continue trying. Chu Luiyue had always been skeptical about these words. She only thought that her master was comforting her, so she agreed. Since then, she didn't try to cultivate a divine body by force. She never expected that she would have a divine body today. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1913. A thought suddenly flashed across Chu Luiyue's mind. This divine body was formed from the power of the God-destroying tribulation. Even she could not help but gasp when she thought of this. Her heart was beating violently. A divine body formed by the God-destroying tribulation. It was easy to imagine how powerful it was. Chu Luiyue had imagined countless times what kind of divine body she would cultivate. When this day came, she was shocked and could not recover for a long time. She lowered her eyes slightly. At this moment, more and more beautiful soft armor covered her body. The divine body in her dantian was also condensing. It gradually turned from transparent to gorgeous. Some of the flowing light in the sky flew into the 3,000 god regions. Most of them turned into soft armor and embedded themselves around Chu Luiyue. She closed her eyes gently and began to cultivate while holding her breath. The power around her flowed into her body continuously. Her aura was also rising continuously. Everyone was stunned by what they saw. There was dead silence in Peach Blossom Dock City. Everything in front of them changed too quickly. They did not even have time to react. They were facing a life and death crisis a moment ago. In the blink of an eye, the crisis was over? The impact of this was simply too great. The little girl, who was held tightly in her father's arms, was confused. She stretched out her hand and pointed to the sky. She said softly, "Daddy, it's dawn." Hearing this, the middle-aged man was stunned. He looked up instinctively. What he saw stunned him on the spot. Sure enough, a ray of light shone through the originally dark and gloomy sky. Although it was faint, it was there. Moreover, that ray of light seemed to be spreading to the surroundings. After a while, he finally realized something. His eyes widened. The barrier of Peach Blossom Dock is recovering? There was a clap of thunder. Everyone was filled with shock when they heard this. Many pairs of eyes looked at the sky. It seems that the barrier is recovering? Don't you feel that the wild space turbulence seems to be restrained? The mountain fire is also gradually extinguishing. They were in the middle of it. They could feel the changes in the energy most clearly. The space that had been crazily squeezing and contracting seemed to have suddenly stopped, and was gradually returning to its original state. That suffocating pressure also seemed to quietly dissipate. Duan Qingxuan could not help but mutter in a low voice, "Peach Blossom Dock is alive?" Yen Qing let out a long sigh. Her Highness, truly amazing. Actually, it wasn't that he wasn't worried before. However, Master insisted on not making a move. At most, he only set up a barrier. But before they could be used, the princess consort had already taken care of them. Gradually, some people in the crowd regained their senses. Is this all thanks to Shangguanyu? As soon as his voice fell, the bustling street immediately fell into a dead silence. Everyone had complicated expressions on their faces. In actual fact, they more or less had some complaints about Chu Luiyue previously. If she had not offended the Black Sword sect and the Nan family, perhaps this crisis would not have occurred. However, after experiencing all this, they knew very well that the survival of so many people in Peach Blossom Dock was indeed because of Chu Luiyue. She was the one who withstood the God-destroying tribulation. She was also the one who saved the people in the city in time. Even Peach Blossom Dock, which was about to collapse, was starting to recover bit by bit. Who could say that this was not due to her efforts? In fact, they also knew very well that she was the most innocent one in all of this. The ones who really started this conflict were the Black Sword sect and the Nan family. And now, everyone was relying on her to survive. How could they have the nerve to blame her for all this? Hey, I don't care about others, but my life was indeed saved by Shangguanyu. I owe her a debt of gratitude and I will repay her kindness. In the crowd, a dark-skinned burly man suddenly spoke with a voice full of energy. He cupped his fists and saluted in the direction of Chu Luiyue. In the future, if anyone dares to make things difficult for her, don't blame me for not showing mercy. After a short moment of silence, all sorts of voices were heard. Me too. She saved my life and I will remember it in my heart. I heard that the third boss of the U residence is one of her people? I have long wanted to go to the U residence to take a look. When this matter is over, I will go there and see if I can find any work. Ah, you little brat, you're really dreaming. Even if you are willing to go, they might not be willing to accept you. The U residence's vetting is very strict. I think I am quite suitable. TSK. You guys are way too selfish. I am different from you. I will not join the U residence, but if that person in the U residence need anything in the future, I will go through water and tread on fire. Many people expressed their opinions and the atmosphere quickly became lively. Duan Qingxuan looked at Yan Qing with a strange expression. The two of them quickly exchanged glances. Yan Qing raised an eyebrow. This was indeed not arranged by them. It seemed that there were really people who wanted to seek refuge with the U residence, but thinking about it carefully, it was normal. Ink Sword Sect had been destroyed, and the U residence was one of the best in the entire Peach Blossom Cove. Even if there were some who could compete with them after this incident, they could not be compared to them. After all, everyone now knew that the real master of the U residence was Chu Luiyue. In today's battle, Chu Luiyue had saved the entire Peach Blossom Cove. Everyone here owed her their lives. Who else could have such an advantage? Besides that, Chu Luiyue's peerless strength was enough to make countless people admire and follow her. She was a high god, summoned the god-destroying tribulation and won. With such talent and battle strength, how many people in the world could be on par with her? In the Peach Blossom Cove, the strong were respected. And Chu Luiyue, after this battle, had undoubtedly become a peerless expert in the hearts of countless people. Chu Luiyue held her breath and concentrated. The power of the god-destroying tribulation was gradually being devoured by her. Countless soft armor covered her entire body, and even her neck and face were covered by the translucent soft armor. The last ray of light finally landed in between her eyebrows. The moment it covered her, her eyebrows suddenly burned with a scorching heat. A totem suddenly flashed into existence. Digression. Maybe it was because I fell sick a while ago and my body was overdrawn. I have rested a lot in the past few days and I will try to recover tomorrow. Thank you for your understanding. Mon mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1914. Chu Luiyue let out a clear cry. She had achieved the phenomenal success of her divine body. A beautiful soft armor covered her body. It was dazzling. Light poured down from the sky and shone on her body, reflecting fragments of sparkling light. She opened her eyes abruptly. A vast and majestic aura erupted from her body. Everyone was in awe. Even though Chu Luiyue was only a high deity, her divine body's suppression was comparable to her eminence's. Chu Luiyue exhaled deeply as she felt the vigorous power surging in her body. Phew, so this was what it felt like to have a divine body. She looked down. The Peach Blossom Dock was in a mess. The inside of the city was still fine, but the continuous mountain range outside the city was almost completely destroyed. There were ravines everywhere and there were traces of fire everywhere. The strong smell of blood filled the air. Chu Luiyue frowned slightly. She was undoubtedly partly responsible for the Peach Blossom Dock's current state. She raised her hand and put away the shield in her hand. Then she took a step forward. The divine domain under her feet rippled lightly and then quietly dissipated. The stones withdrew their divine domains and returned to their normal grayish-white appearance. Chu Luiyue waved her hand, and the stones flew back to her. The stones in front of her jumped a few times in front of her, as if they were eager to be praised. The stones in the row behind them also jumped up and fought to be first. If it weren't for the fact that Chu Luiyue had repeatedly taught them to be obedient and that nobody was allowed to cut the queue, it would have been a mess by now. Looking at the pile of stones jumping around, Chu Luiyue's lips couldn't help but curl up, and a smile appeared in her eyes. Good job. Hearing the praise, the stones were very happy and jumped back into her interspatial ring. Everyone was dumbfounded. Could this be? Chu Luiyue did not care about them. After all, they had seen what they should and should not see. In that case, there was nothing to hide. Also, she could take this opportunity to let the people in the Peach Blossom Dock owe her a favor. Actually, she didn't think too much about it at first. But now that things had come to this, it was not without benefits. Most of the energy of the god-destroying tribulation had been swallowed by Chu Luiyue to refine his god body. As for the remaining portion, it had fused into the rocks. Chu Luiyue could clearly feel that the divine domain above was much stronger than before. This was a pleasant surprise. Finally, Chu Luiyue flipped his wrist and took out an item. The people below watched from afar, unable to see clearly. What's that in her hand? I don't know. It's too small. It looks like a sprout. Just as everyone was puzzled, they saw Chu Luiyue gently wave his hand. A verdant leaf swayed in the wind. Then the abundant energy between heaven and earth began to surge. Hula, the energy was like a tide surging violently. A ray of sunlight shone down. In the distance, the enchantment of the peach blossom dock began to reform. Is that Tutian baby? Someone murmured in disbelief. Everyone was shocked. That was a rare treasure. Chu Luiyue even had this? Just how many trump cards did she have on her? Chu Luiyue's motive for summoning the Tutian baby was simple. After all the previous torment, the void of the peach blossom dock had collapsed beyond recognition. The energy was rampaging, and the entire space was almost completely destroyed. Even though she had successfully passed the god-destroying tribulation, everything here still needed to be sorted out and organized. The Tutian baby could easily control the vigorous energy of heaven and earth. Naturally, it was the perfect choice. The result was as expected. With just a thought, the Tutian baby began to deal with the chaotic energy. The enchantment of the peach blossom dock quickly reformed. Compared to before, there was a subtle difference. A faint, beautiful light appeared on the enchantment. From afar, it looked like countless colorful light spots were sprinkled on it, emitting a lustrous glow. That was the residual energy of the god-destroying tribulation. However, apart from looking different, the biggest difference between this newly formed enchantment and the previous one was that it was several times stronger than before. In fact, the entire peach blossom dock had undergone the baptism of the god-destroying tribulation and had been reborn. All the unstable void after it had completely collapsed relied on the energy of the god-destroying tribulation to rebuild and become incomparably stable. Abundant energy of heaven and earth surged back and forth. Feeling this huge and subtle change, Chu Luiyue sighed deeply in her heart. Destruction followed by reconstruction. This was the peach blossom dock of today. Congratulations you, Rongxiu moved and came to Chu Luiyue's side. His handsome and charming face was filled with a warm smile. Between his eyebrows, there was undisguised affection and pride. This was his From the beginning to the end, he had insisted on not interfering. Although his heart ached, he knew that she could do it. As expected, this huge peach blossom dock had completely become her domain from now on. In this world, there was no one else who could be compared to her. She was the brightest pearl. No matter where she was, she could blossom in a myriad of ways. Chu Luiyue raised her eyes and looked into his deep eyes. She also raised the corners of her lips. With just one look, they could understand each other's feelings. She knew that Rongxiu was proud of her and happy for her. You already thought of this? Chu Luiyue asked with interest. Rongxiu's smile deepened. The god-destroying tribulation. I really didn't expect it. He didn't expect it to come so quickly. In the beginning, he didn't interfere because he knew that she was dissatisfied with the Black Sword sect and the Nan family. He wanted to let her fight to her heart's content and vent her dissatisfaction. But later, it was indeed unexpected. Of course, she was always able to surprise him. The sky gradually brightened. The flames in various places had already been extinguished. Abundant energy of heaven and earth surged out. The Tutian baby had an extremely vigorous vitality. In this kind of situation, it could play a huge role. Chu Luiyue glanced out of the corner of her eyes. Suddenly, she saw that there seemed to be something reflecting the clear light below. She focused her eyes and saw that a lake had appeared in the midst of the messy mountain range. Under the sunlight, the surface of the lake rippled. There were piles of rocks by the lake. A stream flowed down, spreading out into a clear and shallow stream. Fresh green shoots sprouted from the side of the lake. Chu Luiyue widened her eyes slightly. This lake, looks like I've seen it before. Suddenly, a white light flashed in her mind. Isn't this the small space that Sanson had previously? The barrier above was still there. From the outside, it still looked like a lake. However, a stream diverged from it and extended all over the mountains and plains. Everywhere it passed, it was a scene full of vitality. A faint fragrance of herbs pervaded the air. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1915. My baby. Sanson's heart ached when she saw this. Little Hachi rolled her eyes. What are you yelling for? Isn't it just a portion of the energy from that small space? This is a good thing for the entire Peach Blossom Dock and our master. Don't delay it. Sanson's cheeks twitched as she felt wronged. Although little Hachi was younger in terms of seniority, no one in the 13U sect dared to argue with her except for her big brother. Even as the third brother, he felt the same way. I know. I'm just feeling sorry for you. With the nourishment from that small space, the Peach Blossom Dock, which was almost completely destroyed, would recover at a much faster speed. Along the banks of the stream, if nothing went wrong, there should be many heavenly treasures growing in the future. This was a huge fortune. As long as the Peach Blossom Dock could recover quickly, it would be great for their master. After today, the entire Peach Blossom Dock will belong to our master, 13 muttered softly. There was still a look of shock on his face, which still had a hint of youthfulness, and it hadn't faded away. He had always known that his master was powerful. But over the years he had spent most of his time with his big brother and the rest. When he was by his master's side, it was actually pitiful. Plus, he was young and had never seen Chu Liue fight with his own eyes. And this time, it had undoubtedly brought him a huge shock. Sun Yi's eyes relaxed and a trace of a smile appeared in his usually indifferent eyes. This was the master's intention for coming here this time. But he didn't expect that after all these twists and turns, it would be completed smoothly in advance. And the entire Peach Blossom Dock was taken care of. His master didn't like the options that Sanson had given him. Now that the last hidden danger of Peach Blossom Dock was eliminated, his master would take over directly. There was no better result than this. The Nan family. In the study, Nan Yifan stood silently. It was already night time. The bright moon hung high in the sky. The cool moonlight flowed in through the window, elongating his shadow. He had been standing in this position from day to night for an entire day. The night wind was cold and his whole body was icy cold. But Nan Yifan didn't feel it at all. He lowered his head slightly. His face was hidden in the darkness and couldn't be seen clearly. Knock knock. There was a knock on the door. Patriarch, you haven't eaten for a day. Why don't you have some food? The one who spoke was his confidant, an elder of the Nan family. It was difficult to conceal the worry in his voice. In fact, to powerhouses at their level, not eating for a day was nothing. The reason why this elder was so worried was because he sensed that something was wrong with Nan Yifan's condition. The last time he was like this was on the day of Nan Yi's funeral. But at that time he had only stood for half a day. But this time, something had clearly happened, and it was even more terrifying than Nan Yi's death. The elder standing outside the door was burning with anxiety. Nan Yi was the apple of Nan Yifan's eyes. What could hurt him more than her death? This elder knew that Luo Yannan and Yu Xing had gone to the Peach Blossom Cove. Therefore he was particularly frightened at this moment. He wanted to ask for an explanation, but he didn't dare. You can leave first. After a while, Nan Yifan finally spoke. His voice was low and hoarse. The elder outside the door moved his lips and the uneasiness in his heart grew stronger, but he didn't dare to say anything. Yes. Just as he was about to turn around and leave, he heard Nan Yifan say, "Wait." Then he heard the door open. The elder hurriedly turned around and saw Nan Yifan open the door and walk out. Stay here. I'll go to the family. Digression. 6 o'clock mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1916. The elder was shocked when he heard this. Patriarch means? No. Nan Yifan nodded. But, it was already late at night. The elder didn't finish his sentence. Because Nan Yifan raised his head and glanced at him. It was only a day, but Nan Yifan looked like he had aged more than 10 years. Under the faint moonlight, the elder even saw that his hair had turned white. His face, which was always high-spirited, was now haggard. Although the light was dim, the elder still saw Nan Yifan's bloodshot eyes. The moment he met Nan Yifan's gaze, he was instantly speechless. He couldn't say the rest of the words. He didn't know how to describe this feeling. Desolation, fragility, regret, resentment. It was as if all the negative emotions had gathered together. A heavy and oppressive aura spread from Nan Yifan's body. It was so oppressive that she couldn't breathe. Immediately, Nan Yifan said. The elder's heart skipped a beat, and he instinctively felt that something had happened. He had never seen the patriarch like this. Could it be that the eldest young master and the others? He quickly lowered his head and replied in a low voice. Yes. With me here, please rest assured, patriarch. Nan Yifan nodded and then walked past him. A biting cold killing intent was faintly discernible. The elder's heart skipped a beat. When he came back to his senses and wanted to turn around and say a few more words, he found that Nan Yifun's figure had already disappeared. The elder who was left in place frowned. His heart was beating fast as if it was being gripped tightly by something. A strong sense of uneasiness welled up in his heart. When Nan Yi died, although the patriarch was very sad, it wasn't to this extent. It went without saying what had happened. After a long time he finally sighed. I'm afraid the world of divine ruins will be in chaos again. Nan Yifun was very fast. It took him a night to come to Meha County. This was the family Yi's territory. Unlike the mountainous terrain of the Nan family, Meha County was a vast and boundless plain. On the green land, a wide and clear river meandered through. Plum blossoms meandered along the riverside. Behind the plum forest stood a grand and luxurious city. Above the city gate, there was a golden plaque with the words Meha County. There were guards in martial attire standing guard at the city gate. When Nan Yifun arrived, the sky was just beginning to brighten. There was almost no one coming in and out of the city gate. Therefore, when he appeared, he immediately attracted the attention of the guards. Who are you? The guards immediately became alert and held their swords in front of them. Meha County was family Yi's territory. Normally, only family Yi's people would enter and leave. It was indeed suspicious that someone would come over so early in the morning. Nan Yifun directly revealed his identity. Go inform your patriarch that Nan Yifun of the Nan clan has come to visit. Nan Yifun? Why was he here all of a sudden? At the Yi residence, the head of family Yi Wentao looked up from his book in surprise when he heard this. How many people did he bring? Patriarch Nan didn't bring anyone with him. He came alone. Moreover, he seemed to be in a hurry as if he had something important to do. The guard who came to report asked respectfully, Then, Patriarch, do you want to see him or not? Of course. Yi Wentao stood up, closed the book and put it aside. He was very tall and looked to be no more than 36 or 37 years old. His facial features were handsome and elegant. He was dressed in a stone-green robe, which made him look like a refined scholar. Anyone who saw him would find it hard to imagine that he was the current head of family Yi. In the world of divine ruins, there were very few rumors about Yi Wentao. In everyone's imagination, Yi Wentao should be fierce and ruthless. It seemed that only in that way could he control the entire family Yi. But in reality he was very different from what most people imagined him to be. Patriarch Nan, please come to the living room. I'll come later. Yes. The guard received the order and quickly left. Yi Wentao looked at his back as he left in a hurry, and his eyebrows moved slightly. The Nan clan and family Yi didn't have much contact with each other. And he knew a little about Nan Yifun. This person was proud by nature. Now that he suddenly came in person, something must have happened. Yi Wentao's heart was pounding. He didn't know what had happened that could make Nan Yifun put aside his pride and come in person. He thought for a while and didn't have an answer. Finally, he decided to meet Nan Yifun first. You can cultivate here in peace. No one will disturb you. He suddenly turned around and said. Behind the 8 screens on the rosewood base, a figure was vaguely reflected. Yes. His voice was low and slightly hoarse, but it also contained a bit of laziness and laziness. Yi Wentao nodded. Only then did he walk out and personally lock the door. After telling the servants to guard the place well, he turned around and left. Not long after Nan Yifun was led into the living room, Yi Wentao came. Haha, brother Nan, what wind blew you here today? Yi Wentao walked in with an eager smile. Nan Yifun looked up. The two looked at each other for a moment, a silent confrontation. A trace of surprise flashed across Yi Wentao's eyes. In his impression, Nan Yifun was always high-spirited and proud. But this time he was visibly haggard, and his hair was stained with white frost. What did he go through? Just as Yi Wentao was guessing in his heart, Nan Yifun had already spoken. I'm here because I have something important to discuss with Brother Yi. After that, he paused for a moment. Yi Wentao quickly reacted, waved his hand and dismissed the servants. All of you leave first. Family head, the confidant accompanying him, was a little hesitant. Nan Yifun didn't look too good like this. If he went crazy and did something, leave? Yi Wentao's voice turned cold. This was family. Nan Yifun dared to come alone. Did he not even have the guts to talk to him alone? Wouldn't that be a joke? The people below all knew his temper, so they didn't dare to say more and hurriedly left. Before he left, he even closed the door carefully. No one dared to eavesdrop here. He walked over and sat opposite Nan Yifun, his expression had returned to its usual gentle and calm. "Brother Nan, if you have something to say, just say it." Nan Yifan stared at him. "I'm here this time to form an alliance with you. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network." Chapter 1917. Nan Yifan said word by word. Every word seemed to carry an indescribable heavy stench and resentment. Yi Wentao was slightly stunned, then smiled. "Brother Nan, are you joking?" After all, the relationship between family Yi and the Nan family had never been close. At this time, Nan Yifan suddenly came alone and asked for an alliance. How could Yi Wentao not be surprised? But Nan Yifan's expression didn't change. "As long as Brother Yi is willing to agree, you can name any conditions." Yi Wentao's smile gradually disappeared. He looked at Nan Yifan and carefully observed his expression, pondering inwardly. This sentence from Nan Yifan's mouth was extremely rare. At the same time, it also showed Nan Yifan's determination this time. Did he really come to win over family Yi? But the Nan family and family Yi's status were equal. Why would he do this? After thinking about it, Yi Wentao decided to ask first. "Brother Nan, don't worry. If you really encounter difficulties, family Yi will not stand by and do nothing. I just don't know, what is it that needs to make Brother Nan so worried?" Nan Yifan paused. "The Nan family wants to fight with Yuntian Tower." Yi Wentao's expression finally changed. "Yuntian Tower? You want to go against the Holy Sun?" Nan Yifan nodded. "Yes." Yi Wentao frowned. "Brother Nan, I'm afraid I can't agree to this." Was this Nan Yifan crazy? Why would he want to fight with Rongxiu? Nan Yifan wasn't surprised by Yi Wentao's answer. In fact, a day ago he wouldn't have thought that he would make such a decision. But things were unpredictable. At this point he had no way out. The moment Yu Xing's jade broke, he knew that he couldn't endure it anymore. He could not completely blame Yi's death on them, but Yu Xing, his years of hard work had all gone to waste. "As I said, I will agree to any condition of Brother Yi." Nan Yi's tone was much heavier than before. Yi Wentao's frown deepened. Nan Yifan knew how dangerous it was to go against Rongxiu. Why did he have to do this? He was even willing to pay a huge price for it. Yi Wentao shook his head. "Brother Nan, you know very well that this matter is not that simple." In the end, he didn't want to offend Rongxiu for the sake of the Nan family. "Brother Nan, you should know how difficult it is to deal with that person. If he chose to go against Yuntian Tower, it would not end well for him. Why must Brother Nan do this? If there's a misunderstanding between you and Yuntian Tower, I can step forward and mediate. Perhaps." Since Nan Yifan had personally come looking for him, Rongxiu would definitely know about this matter. Then, no matter what he said, it was impossible for him to walk out of this quagmire clean. Instead of being secretive and arousing suspicion for no reason, it was better to be honest with him. In this way he could also do the Nan family a favor. In Yi Wentao's opinion, this was the best choice. However, Nan Yifan interrupted him. "There's no possibility of reconciliation between Yuntian Tower and me." Yi Wentao looked at him suspiciously. "Brother Nan, you mean?" Nan Yifan took a deep breath and looked straight at Yi Wentao. Yi and Yu Xing were both killed by them. Yi Wentao was shocked at first, but then he immediately understood. No wonder. Those two children were Nan Yifan's lifeblood. Especially Nan Yuxing, who was basically confirmed to be the next patriarch of the Nan family. Because both of them were very outstanding, Nan Yifan had always been proud of himself as the patriarch. Now that both of them were dead, not only did Nan Yifan have no descendants, but his position as the patriarch would also be unstable in the future. Even Yi Wentao knew that there were many people in the Nan family who secretly coveted the position of the patriarch. Nan Yifan did this to avenge his children and to protect his position as the patriarch. These two things were the most important to him. No wonder he came today. In fact, what Yi Wentao didn't know was that there was a very important reason why Nan Yifan chose to do this. Even if he didn't do this, Rongxiu wouldn't let him go. With Rongxiu's intelligence, since he had already killed Nan Yuxing, he would definitely find out that Nan Yifan was behind this. How could he just let it go? After the matter at Peach Blossom Dock was over, he would definitely make a move. At that time, Nan Yifan and the others would be in a passive position. Instead of sitting and waiting for death, it was better to make a move first. There might even be a chance of survival. Nan Yifan really had no other choice. How could he not be in awe of Rongxiu? If it wasn't for the fact that he really had no other way out, he wouldn't have done this. After knowing that Nan Yuxing had died, he stood in the study for an entire day. He seemed to have done nothing, but in fact he had thought a lot. He regretted it. Even he didn't know why he tacitly allowed Nan Yuxing and the others to go to Peach Blossom Dock quietly at that time. It was as if he had made that decision by accident. Perhaps it was because he felt guilty towards Nan Yi and also resentful towards Rong Xiao and Chu Luiyue. He thought that they didn't bring many people with them and it was really the best time to make a move in a place like Peach Blossom Dock. What if he succeeded? It was this what if, and all those thoughts that made Nan Yifan make this decision that he would regret for the rest of his life. At this point there was no use in regretting it. He could only fight back. Yi Wentao didn't know this. But in his opinion, the reasons that Nan Yifan said were enough to support him to make such a choice. He was silent for a long time, but he was still unwilling to agree. Brother Nan, others may not know, but you know. That person is really not easy to deal with. Perhaps this was Nan Yifan's only choice. But what did this have to do with his family Yi? If he got involved in this matter for no reason, not only would he not get any benefits, but he would also get himself into trouble. Yi Wentao never made a losing deal. Seeing that he was in such a difficult position, Nan Yifan sneered in his heart, but he didn't show it on his face. He suddenly said, "Brother Yi, do you know that Rong Xiao and Shangguan Yu went to the god-slaying tomb and took something from the Black Wall?" Yi Wentao suddenly looked up. He restrained his expression, but Nan Yifan was also sharp-eyed. How could he not see the surging waves in his eyes? As for what it is, I think Brother Yi should know without me saying it, right? Nan Yifan suddenly laughed. The Holy Sun's princess is not a simple person. The heavenly square cauldron and the Tutian baby are both in her hands. In addition, she has an unknown black shield in her hand. Although it looks ordinary, it is not inferior to any venerable artifact. When Nan Yifan said this, he didn't notice that Yi Wentao quickly frowned when he heard about the black shield. It's strange. I heard that Shangguan Yu is a person outside the Divine Ruins world, but she seems to have a strong bloodline power. Brother Nan, have you seen her totem? Digression, 7:00 p.m. 5th update. Wow, mobile phone users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1918. Nan Yifan shook his head. No. There were a lot of rumors about Chu Luiyue in the Divine Ruins world. Especially after her wedding with Rong Xiao, the rumors became even more heated. At first, everyone only thought that she came from a humble background, but a series of things that happened later made everyone know that she actually had several backers behind her. Although Nan Yifan had seen Chu Luiyue before, he had never seen her totem. Brother Yi, why are you suddenly asking about this? Nan Yifan was a little puzzled. Yi Wentao smiled and lowered his eyes. Nothing, I just suddenly thought of this and felt a little curious. I heard that when she tested her bloodline at the Yuntian Tower, the result was the same as the Chosen. If she was really born outside the Divine Ruins world, how could she have the bloodline power? One had to know that only the ancestors who had broken through the shackles and reached the peak strength would have the bloodline power later on. It was impossible for someone outside the Divine Ruins world to do so. Isn't Shangguan Jing her ancestor? As Nan Yifan spoke, he suddenly stopped. It was indeed not right. Although Shangguan Jing was a supreme god expert and used to be in the limelight, when he came to the Divine Ruins world, he seemed to have already established the Tianling dynasty. Later on, he encountered trouble in the Divine Ruins world, his soul scattered and he fell into a deep sleep for 1,000 years. It was not until Chu Luiyue came here that he came back to life. No matter how he thought about it, the bloodline power in Chu Luiyue's body did not seem to be inherited from him. Nan Yifan frowned and glanced at Yi Wentao. Why, Brother Yi seems to be interested in this Shangguan Yu? Yi Wentao smiled. I'm just a little curious. Since Brother Nan doesn't know, then there's nothing to ask. He was always so stubborn that Nan Yifan gradually lost his patience. Brother Yi, let's put these things aside for now. I will only ask you one last time. Do you agree to my previous proposal? Yi Wentao fell into deep thought. The room was silent. Time slowly passed. Every minute and every second was torture for Nan Yifan. But he could only wait. After a while, Yi Wentao finally nodded. I promise you. However, I have a condition. Nan Yifan and Yi Wentao talked for a long time in the room. About an hour later, the door was opened again. Nan Yifan cupped his hands and took his leave. Brother Yi, please wait, I'll be going back now. Yi Wentao knew that it would be hard for him to stay here, so he didn't ask him to stay and just nodded. Brother Nan, be careful. Nan Yifan responded and turned to leave. His figure quickly disappeared into the distance. Yi Wentao didn't look away until his figure disappeared. The sound of footsteps could be heard. Yi Wentao's expression returned to normal as he calmly looked up. The person who came was his second brother Yi Wenzhua. Big brother, that person just now was Nan Yifan? In front of Yi Wentao, Yi Wenzhua's attitude was much more restrained. On the surface, Yi Wenzhua looked older than Yi Wentao, but in fact Yi Wentao was 10 years older than him. It was just that Yi Wentao was extremely talented and his cultivation was very smooth, so he looked younger. He nodded. What is he doing here? Yi Wentao frowned. The Nan family had little contact with them. As the family head, Nan Yifan suddenly came in person. It was hard not to think too much. Yi Wentao smiled faintly. He has his reasons for coming. Yi Wentao felt a little uncomfortable. Big brother clearly didn't want to talk about it. This was nothing. After all, the two of them were not ordinary people. What they discussed together must be important, which couldn't be easily revealed. But he was Big brother's younger brother. Was he not qualified to know? The reason why Yi Wentao was so concerned about this matter was that this was not the first time such a situation had happened. The head of the family Yi was Yi Wentao. Almost all the important matters were decided by him. Here he had absolute power. Yi Wentao had never coveted the position of the head of the family, but over the years, Big brother often didn't tell him anything. In fact, there were many times when many elders knew about it, but he knew nothing about it. Yi Wentao always felt that he was marginalized in the family Yi. After a long time, how could there be no resentment and dissatisfaction? But other than that, Big brother treated him well in other aspects. This made Yi Wentao feel very conflicted. And this time it was still the same. He endured it for a while and finally swallowed his anger and changed the topic. I'm here because I have good news to tell Big brother. Jiuqing has broken through. Yi Wentao raised his eyebrows, seeming a little surprised. So fast? Just now he had told him to cultivate well. In just a few hours he had broken through, as expected of you personally taught him. Yi Wentao praised with satisfaction. These words finally improved Yi Wentao's mood. Not at all. After he came back he has been cultivating with Big brother. With Big brother's guidance this child naturally broke through quickly. As he spoke he paused for a moment. Big brother, no matter what, half of family Yi's blood flows in Jiuqing's body. You see, the position of the young master. From the beginning, this was what he had been thinking. Yi Wentao had no children. In the future he would definitely choose a successor from the younger generation. And Jun Jiuqing was the most suitable one. Yi Wentao put one hand behind his back. He didn't beat around the bush like before. Instead he seriously thought for a long time. You are right. It is indeed time to choose a young master. Inform everyone that the family meeting will be held tomorrow. Tomorrow? Yi Wentao was a little surprised, but the joy in his heart washed away these emotions. He immediately nodded, unable to hide the excitement in his eyes. Okay. I'll go now. Peach Blossom Dock-yu Mansion. Chu Liwei put down the teacup in his hand and looked at Rong Xiu in surprise. Two big families? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience came from Love Network. Chapter 1919. Rong Xiu nodded and said slowly. That's right. Most of the families in the world of divine ruins are divided into first, second, and third-class families, but there are two families that are not included in this. One is the Nan family, and the other is family Yi. Chu Liwei was a little puzzled. Why are these two families so unique? Rong Xiu laughed. It's a long time ago. Do you remember that I mentioned to you that 10,000 years ago, there was an earth-shattering battle in the god-slaying mound, and countless experts died? Chu Liwei nodded. Of course she remembered. At that time the battle was fierce. I heard that many people almost fought their way out of the god-slaying mound, and there were countless casualties. Such a fierce battle caused the energy of heaven and earth to riot, and it was almost dark. It gradually threatened many ordinary cultivators outside the god-slaying mound. Chu Liwei pondered for a moment. Judging from the tombstones they had seen in the god-slaying mound, the battle at that time could have caused such a result. With so many experts gathered and fought, it was easy to imagine what a terrifying scene it would have been. Fortunately, someone came to stop them and set up a boundary outside the god-slaying mound. It was not until the battle ended that the boundary finally broke. But it also protected the people outside the god-slaying mound. Chu Liwei widened her eyes in surprise. What kind of person could do that? This not only required benevolence and righteousness, but also extraordinary strength. Rong Xiu paused for a moment and smiled. That person's identity is very mysterious and no one knows. Later, when the battle ended, that person disappeared. It is said that the ancestors of the Nan family and Family E were followers of that person. Chu Luiyue suddenly understood. Later, the two of them did not pursue that person. Instead, they each found a place in the world of divine ruins and established their own families and clans. Today, the Nan family and Family E. Rong Xiu poured a cup of tea. His slender fingers gently stroked the porcelain teacup. His voice was light and ethereal. 10,000 years have passed, and these things have long been buried in the long passage of time. There are very few people who know about it. The Nan family and Family E had always thought highly of themselves and rarely got involved in outside affairs. The only ones who know about them are those first-rate aristocratic families with quite a bit of inheritance. No wonder. After listening to Rong Xiu's explanation, Chu Luiyue finally understood why she had never heard of the Nan family before. It wasn't hard to understand why Nan Yi and the others were so arrogant when they met them outside the god-slaying tomb. The Nan family and Family E, it was an existence that transcended these aristocratic families. So, the Nan family and Family E are the two most powerful families in the god-slaying mound? Why was Nan Yifan so afraid of you before? Chu Luiyue asked tentatively. It wasn't the first time she had asked this question. Rong Xiu's answer was always very brief. He only said that he had something on Nan Yifan, which made the other party quite afraid. But Chu Luiyue felt that something was wrong. Nan Yifan's attitude didn't seem to be purely because he was threatened. Faintly, there seemed to be some respect and fear in their eyes. Rong Xiu glanced at her with a half-smile. Fear? He has already sent people here. What's there to fear? Chu Luiyue was speechless for a moment. It was really, although Nan Yuxing had always said that he was here to avenge Nan Yi, how could he have mobilized so many elders without Nan Yifan's tacit consent? Thinking of this, Chu Luiyue changed the topic. By the way, I wonder how Luo Yan and the others are doing now? It had been 3 days since the day of the chaos in Peach Blossom Dock. In these 3 days, Chu Luiyue and Rong Xiu had been staying at the Yu residence to deal with the aftermath. The terrain of the mountain range outside Peach Blossom Dock had almost completely changed, but fortunately, there was abundant energy here. With the help of Sanson's small space, everything was quickly recovering. Although Peach Blossom Dock had also suffered a lot of damage, fortunately most of them had survived. As for Majin sect, they had been completely annihilated in this chaotic battle. Even their previous residence had been razed to the ground by the angry crowd. On the other hand, the Yu residence had been very lively recently. Every day many people came to the gate. Some expressed their gratitude and some wanted to enter the Yu residence. In short, they all wanted to follow Chu Luiyue. After this incident, the survivors of Peach Blossom Dock were unprecedentedly united. They admired and respected Chu Luiyue very much and were willing to follow by her side. The reason why they were like this, other than owing Chu Luiyue their lives and admiring her talent and strength, there was another important reason. The enchantment of Peach Blossom Dock was covered with a layer of God-destroying tribulation energy. Now, it was completely under the control of Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue had become the owner of Peach Blossom Dock. The enchantment of Peach Blossom Dock was stable now, and the energy of heaven and earth was abundant. It was the best place to cultivate. Who would not want to stay here? Before Chu Luiyue came, she had been thinking of finding a place to build her own power. Was there any place more suitable than Peach Blossom Dock? Therefore she went with the flow and took over the entire Peach Blossom Dock. With the enchantment under her control, she naturally had the right to speak in Peach Blossom Dock. These few days she had already sent Sanson and a few others to deal with these matters. They screened the candidates and formed a team of guards. Those with suspicious identities would be locked up and dealt with. At this time, most of the people were loyal to the Yu residents. Even if there were a few suspicious people, they did not dare to act rashly. Sanson had stayed here for a long time and understood the situation in the city well. Therefore these matters were progressing very smoothly. With the help of Tsin Yi and the others, they were even more efficient. This was why Chu Luiyue had the time to sit here and drink tea with Rong Xiu. She had asked this question because Luo Yin and the other 3 elders of the Nan family had also been locked up alone after that day. Yes, even with the drifting cloud diagram, they had not been able to escape in the end. Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows slightly. Yin Qing has already been interrogated for 3 days. We should have news soon. Chu Luiyue's brows twitched slightly. She was a little hesitant. But those 4 people are all gods after all. It won't be easy to get anything out of them. As soon as she finished speaking, familiar footsteps came from outside. Your Highness, Princess Consort. The person who came in was none other than Yan Qing. Chu Luiyue noticed that he had changed his clothes and had the unique refreshing scent of someone who had just taken a bath. He had specially tidied himself up before coming here. Even so, there was still a faint smell of blood on his body. It could be seen that the process of these 3 days of interrogation. Yan Qing bowed respectfully and said bluntly. One of them confessed. These words immediately interrupted Chu Luiyue's thoughts. She asked in surprise. Confessed? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1920. Yes. Yan Qing bowed her head slightly. Nan Hongyang admitted that they came here with the permission of the head of the Nan family, Nan Yifan. Chu Luiyue was in disbelief. This testimony was fatal for the Nan family. Did Yan Qing really pry open the mouth of the Nan family? She couldn't help but look Yan Qing up and down carefully again. His face was still as cold as ice and he was still as calm as ever. It was as if this matter was nothing to him, but that was Her Eminence. Chu Luiyue didn't think that Nan Hongyang would choose to betray the Nan family. Since Nan Yifan was behind this matter, the people he chose must be people he trusted. Then, since Nan Hongyang had spoken, he must have been forced into a corner. No matter what, that was Her Eminence. What method did Yan Qing use to actually be able to find out all these things? Besides this, did he say anything else? Rong Xiu didn't seem to be surprised and asked lightly. Yan Qing shook her head. No. He said that the main planners of this matter were Nan Yuxing and Luo Yan, and the rest of them just followed the order and came together. He didn't know the details. This was not impossible. It was a matter of great importance. The fewer people who knew, the better. Nan Yifan probably didn't expect that they would fail even after sending such a powerful force. More importantly, he didn't even have the time to escape. In the end, he was captured and interrogated under torture. Chu Luiyue touched her chin. If Nan Yifan had known that things would develop to this point, he probably wouldn't have made this decision. But there was no medicine for regret in the world. What about Luo Yan? Yan Qing paused. He refused to talk. He was a tough nut to crack. There was still some difference between him and Nan Hongyang, otherwise he wouldn't have such a high status in the Nan family. Chu Luiyue had expected that he wouldn't talk. Instead, she was quite surprised when Yan Qing asked Nan Hongyang to admit it. She smiled and said, It's fine. Since Nan Hongyang has admitted it, it doesn't matter whether he tells us or not. Rong Xiu knocked on the table. That may be the case, but his biological mother is more convincing. Chu Luiyue nodded in agreement. She pondered for a moment. I'll ask him myself later. A trace of hesitation flashed across Yan Qing's face. She subconsciously looked at Rong Xiu. Your Highness, that place is very dirty. No matter, I will accompany you. Rong Xiu didn't seem to care. Since she wanted to go, she must have her reasons. Chu Luiyue winked at Rong Xiu. Her man was indeed reliable. Rong Xiu suddenly asked, Is there any movement from the Nan family? Yan Qing immediately said, Not yet. Their men had been on high alert, but until now the Nan family hadn't sent anyone over. Rong Xiu narrowed his eyes. Nan Yifan should have known the moment Nan Yuxing died. Now several days had passed, but he still hadn't made any move. This wasn't normal. Chu Luiyue stood up. In that case, why don't we ask Luo Yan directly now? Yan Qing didn't stop her anymore. She took a step back. Rong Xiu suddenly sighed. Chu Luiyue looked at him in confusion. What's wrong? Didn't he say that he would go with her? Rong Xiu leaned back in the chair, holding his forehead with one hand and gently rubbing between his eyebrows with his slender fingers. His movements were lazy, but there was an indescribable nobility in his bones. The sunlight shone on him, making his white clothes look even whiter than snow. He looked at Chu Luiyue, and there seemed to be a warm color at the corners of his eyes and eyebrows. As newlyweds, Yuer's eyes are full of others, but there is no place for her husband. Digression, the Holy Sun felt bitter in his heart. Continue at 6 o'clock. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 1921. Chu Luiyue's ears flushed red. Even at this time he still had the leisure to do this. She subconsciously glanced at Yan Qing. Yan Qing looked down and pretended to be invisible. His Highness and the Princess Consort were newlyweds. The two of them hadn't been able to be alone for long before rushing here. And during this period of time, the two of them had been busy with many things. Perhaps they didn't even have a chance to talk properly together. It was normal for His Highness to be like this. Although he didn't understand love, he understood His Highness. Chu Luiyue also understood her man very well. So she could only sigh helplessly, walk over and take Rong Xiu's hand. "Husband, what are you talking about? Haven't I been accompanying you these past few days? This time it's your turn to go with me, okay?" She was deliberately teasing him, so she deliberately softened her voice. Her tone was rarely soft and coquettish. Every syllable lingered in his ears, like a feather gently sweeping across his heart. Rong Xiu's lips curled into a smile as he held her hand. Her hand was slender and soft. When she approached, the unique faint fragrance of her body drifted over, refreshing the heart. Rong Xiu looked at her bright and resplendent eyes with a smile. His heart moved. "Okay. Wherever Madam wants to go, husband will naturally follow." As he spoke, he stood up and held her hand tightly. His fingertips gently rubbed against the back of her hand. His generous response made Chu Luiyue feel embarrassed. She coughed and gathered her thoughts. "Then let's go over now." Luo Yin and the others were locked up in the Yu Estate's dungeon. They all knew the place. The two of them walked out hand in hand. Yanqing followed behind. The three of them walked in the direction of the dungeon in the backyard. As soon as they walked out of the courtyard, they bumped into little Hachi and Shifang, who had just returned. Yanqing raised his eyes and looked over. He was instantly taken aback. The two of them looked as if they had just experienced a catastrophe. Their bodies were covered in dirt, and little Hachi's exquisite and gorgeous dress was stained with mud. He looked like he had just come out of a quagmire. Shifang always liked to torment the vegetable garden, so it was often like this. However, little Hachi was famous for being clean and beautiful. Usually, if there were a few wrinkles in her skirt, she would feel uncomfortable for half a day. Now that she suddenly appeared in such an image, it was no wonder that even an iceberg like Yanqing was surprised. However, because Rong Xiu and Chu Luiyue were in front of him, little Hachi and Shifang didn't notice him at first. Seeing the two of them like this, Chu Luiyue was both surprised and distressed. "Little Hachi, Shifang, what are you?" She knew that the two of them had gone out 2 days ago, but she didn't expect them to come back in such a sorry state. "Master." When little Hachi saw Chu Luiyue, she immediately wanted to pounce on him, but before she moved, she remembered her appearance at this time. She sighed dejectedly, spread out her hands and acted coquettishly. "Master, look, little Hachi is so pitiful." Although she said that she was pitiful, her beautiful eyes were still bright and sparkling. Even with such a dirty appearance, it couldn't hide her enchanting beauty. Chu Luiyue stepped forward and gently pinched her face. "Little Hachi is the best." Little Hachi immediately narrowed her eyes in satisfaction. Although the dirt on her body was really driving her crazy. But to be able to hear this sentence, it was worth it. Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows slightly. Shifang moved forward, also waiting for his master's praise with a look of expectation. Then he heard Chu Luiyue ask, "Shifang, how do you take care of your sister 8? Shifang? Everyone clearly did the same thing, and he even did more than sister 8. Why was the treatment completely different? Little Hachi glanced at him proudly. Shifang was still too immature. It had been so many years, but he still didn't recognize his position? I was wrong. Shifang also felt wronged. Chu Luiyue nodded in satisfaction. Your sister 8 usually can't stand these things. Look at how much she's been tormented. In the future, let her do less of those dirty and tiring jobs. Shifang tried to restrain himself, but he couldn't help muttering in a low voice, but Sister 8 is the only one who knows how to take care of those medicinal herbs. How could he not do this kind of thing himself? Although he knew a lot of things, most of the time Sister 8 was more suitable. Little Hachi pursed her lips, and her eyes sparkled as if they could drip water. Just as she was hesitating whether to continue moving closer to her master, she suddenly heard Rong Xiu say, Yanqing, go over first and clean up over there. Upon hearing this name, little Hachi suddenly froze. She stiffly turned her neck and saw in despair that there was an ice cube standing behind Rong Xiu and Shifang. The ice cube said, yes. After saying that, the ice cube seemed to sense little Hachi's gaze and looked over. The two of them looked at each other for a moment. Little Hachi almost fainted. She was now. What was she like now? Ever since the two of them quarreled last time, they hadn't been in contact for a while. Little Hachi originally wanted to find an opportunity to get back at him. Who knew that the opportunity to embarrass herself would not come? Thinking of her disheveled appearance and messy appearance, and then look at him. Little Hachi was about to break down. She had never felt as embarrassed as she did at this moment. Master, I suddenly remembered that I still have something to do. I'll take my leave first. Little Hatchie quickly said this and turned to leave. Her footsteps were hurried, and in the blink of an eye, she was gone. Hey. Little Hatchie, Chu Liwei originally wanted to say a few more words, but who knew that she would leave just like that? She made a grabbing motion in the air before withdrawing her hand. Why are you in such a hurry? Chu Liwei muttered strangely. Wasn't she fine just now? Shifeng, has little Hatchie been acting strangely in the past 2 days? Shifeng swore to the heavens, no, there really isn't. You also know that we are most concerned about Sister 8. If there's anything, how can we not know? After experiencing the beating in reality, Shifeng had already recognized everything. Chu Liwei nodded. Little Hatchie did not look like anything had happened. Then let her be for now. You've been tired for a long time. Go back and have a good rest. Chu Liu's comforting words immediately made Shifeng's eyes brim with tears of joy. Master still cares about me? He nodded vigorously. Don't worry, Master. Most of the people outside have been dealt with, and Third Brother has sent people to take over the rest. I believe that they will recover soon. Chu Liwei laughed. Okay, thank you for your hard work. I'll leave a mountain for you to use as a vegetable garden later. Shifeng was overjoyed. Thank you, Master. With that said, Shifeng did not linger and soon left happily. Chu Liwei exhaled softly and looked at Enchanting, who had not left in time. Forget it, let's go over together. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1922. Enchanting responded, but she felt a little strange. In the beginning, His Highness had planned to go with them. He didn't know why, but he suddenly asked him to clean up the place first. If His Highness really had such a plan, he would have said it earlier and would not have suddenly brought it up halfway. Enchanting took a quick glance at His Highness. His Highness was still as handsome as ever. He was calm and collected, and there was even a faint smile on his face. Since you, doesn't mind, then listen to you, Enchanting was speechless. What was His Highness's faint for? However, His Highness's thoughts had always been hard to grasp. Enchanting only thought for a moment, and then quickly withdrew her thoughts. He respectfully followed behind the two of them, but the scene just now suddenly flashed through his mind. He heard that Shifeng and little Hatchie had gone out of the city to deal with those plants and medicinal herbs these few days. It seemed that it was indeed quite tiring. Previously, he had heard some news about the 13 guards and knew that each of them specialized in different areas. Shifeng usually liked to grow vegetables. In fact, he was very familiar with the geography of the mountains and rivers. He also knew how to plan and deal with the messy mountain forest. Little Hatchie, on the other hand, was fond of alchemy. However, she was different from the average celestial physician. She preferred to ponder over strange herbs and prescriptions. If the two of them worked together, they would be able to help Sanson solve a lot of problems. Regarding the rebuilding of the Peach Blossom Dock, His Highness had made it clear from the start that he did not need their help. Enchanting had been a little worried at first. However, after a few days, he was surprised to find that the 13 guards were indeed able to handle these matters in an orderly manner. Could even be said that he was outstanding. Chu Liu's subordinates seemed ordinary, but they were all very useful when they encountered a real problem. This made Enchanting have a whole new level of respect for Chu Liu and the 13 sect. At this moment, Chu Liu suddenly turned around and glanced at Enchanting. Enchanting was quick-witted. She immediately noticed and looked up. Your Highness. Chu Liu looked at him suspiciously as if he was thinking about something. Enchanting was confused. Chu Liu knew little Hatchie very well. She had always been very concerned about her image, but when it came to serious matters she didn't care about these things. But this time, at first she was very normal. Later it seemed that after she heard Rong Xiu call Enchanting, her attitude suddenly changed. Enchanting, our family's little Hatchie has a bad temper, but she is very kind and is a good girl. If she offended you before, I'll apologize to you on her behalf. Chu Liu knew that little Hatchie had been looking for trouble with Enchanting some time ago. However, little Hatchie always knew her limits, so she didn't bother too much. Moreover, there had been a lot of things going on during this period of time, so she had forgotten about it. Now that he saw their reactions, he suddenly remembered. Maybe they really had a misunderstanding? Enchanting immediately cupped his hands. Princess Consort, you're exaggerating. Miss 8 is very good, it's all my fault. Offended her. Enchanting thought for a moment and swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth. It's all my fault for my inappropriate words and offending little Hachi. He still felt that it wasn't very honorable to say that he had misunderstood her. Therefore he only briefly mentioned it. Chu Luiwei immediately felt relieved when she heard him say that. Yan Qing's personality was always to say what he wanted to say. It seemed that it was really not a big deal. But, for some reason she still felt that it was a little strange. It's just ahead. Rong Xiu held her hand and reminded her. Chu Luiwei came back to her senses, put away these messy thoughts and looked ahead. Let's go and take a look. The Yu Residence's dungeon had been there since the beginning. After Sanson bought this place he renovated it including the dungeon. According to him, everything he prepared for his master had to be the best. So, the dungeon's defensive strength was also far beyond ordinary people's imagination. Just the great Mystic King Master level mystic formations alone were set up as many as 6. Chu Luiwei didn't ask Sanson how he did it. Peach Blossom Cove didn't lack all kinds of capable people. Sanson was able to find them and ask them to help. This was his ability. After imprisoning Luo Yan and the others here, Sanson sent more people to guard this place. Of course, the more important reason why Chu Luiwei was so assured was that she had already done something to these people when she locked them up. Although these 4 people were still in the God realm, they couldn't gather the origin power in their bodies. They were basically no different from cripples. The dungeon was very spacious and empty. Chu Luiwei and the others passed through layers of checkpoints and arrived at the deepest part of the dungeon. Along the way, clear footsteps echoed back and forth, making the entire dungeon seem even more empty and eerie. Before seeing anyone, Chu Luiwei could already smell a thick, sweet and fishy smell. After walking for a while, Yan Qing stopped and took charge of guarding. Rong Xiu and Chu Luiwei continued walking inside. The cells here were all made of fine iron, and they were all connected to each other. However, the 4 people of the Nan family were locked in different places. Not only could they not see each other, they couldn't even hear each other's voices. This was to make it easier to break them down one by one. Finally, the 2 came to the door of a cell. Through the bars and barriers they could clearly see the scene inside. He's Nan Hongyang, Rong Xiu said. Chu Luiwei nodded. At this time, Nan Hongyang was curled up on the ground, covered in blood. It was obvious that he had suffered a lot. Anyone who saw him would find it hard to believe that he was a God realm expert. Hearing the sound, Nan Hongyang moved and looked up. Digression, 7 o'clock. What's more embarrassing than seeing the person you like when you're in a mess? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from LoveNet. Chapter 1923. Under the dim candlelight, Chu Luiwei saw the bloodstains on his face and his horrified eyes. Nan Hongyang's eyes widened almost subconsciously, and he curled up backward. Unfortunately, his arms and legs had been broken and he couldn't move at all. He could only wriggle weakly. It looked like he was in a sorry state. Chu Luiwei narrowed her eyes slightly. Before coming, she had thought that Yan Qing must have used a lot of means to pry open Nan Hongyang's mouth. But when she saw it, she was still a little surprised. She didn't think the scene was bloody and cruel, but she was surprised that Yan Qing could really leave so many wounds on Nan Hongyang's body. The physical strength of a venerable god expert was very strong. Even if Nan Hongyang couldn't use the force in his body now, he should be very resistant. To be able to beat him up like this, Yan Qing's means could be seen. Chu Luiwei raised her eyebrows slightly. She was indeed Rong Xiu's confidant. To be able to reach her current position, Yan Qing naturally had her own strengths, and she was definitely not as simple as she looked. Don't be nervous, we're not here for you this time. Chu Luiwei smiled faintly, her voice gentle. But at this time in Nan Hongyang's eyes she was no different from a demon. It's you? Only then did Nan Hongyang see clearly that it wasn't Yan Qing who came, but Rong Xiu and Chu Luiwei. But this didn't make him relax. Instead, it made him more scared. He remembered clearly that the culprit who drugged him and made him unable to use the force in his body was this woman in front of him. He was extremely angry, but now he was meat on the chopping block, so he didn't dare to be too presumptuous. He knew that once he provoked these 2, his end would be 100 times more miserable than now. I've said all I can say. What else do you want to do? Nan Hongyang's body tightened. His voice was hoarse as if it contained endless anger and resentment. Perhaps he was worried that others would hear him, but he lowered his voice when he spoke. Chu Luiwei sneered. Don't worry, we don't want to do anything. We're just here to thank you. Her eyes were curved, her eyes were bright, and the corners of her lips were raised. Her attitude was sincere. She was really here to thank him. With Nan Hongyang's testimony, they would be in an invincible position if they fell out with the Nan family in the future. Chu Luiyue thought highly of such a meritorious person. Her words were like a stab to Nan Hongyang's heart. His face instantly turned pale. You. Since I've already said it, you can at least give me a quick death. Chu Luiyue raised his eyebrows slightly. TSK. She didn't know what Yin Qing had done to push Nan Hongyang to this point. Only when one's life was worse than death would one beg for death in every way possible. Unfortunately, Chu Luiyue didn't plan to do that. She shook her head regretfully. You haven't said those words in front of the head of the Nan family. How can you die? Don't worry, we'll send people to take good care of you in the coming days. Nan Hongyang trembled violently. His eyes were filled with endless fear. If that was really the case, then no. You. Chu Luiyue didn't give him a chance to argue. She waved her hand gently and turned to leave. Chu Luiyue and Rong Xiu ignored Nan Hongyang screaming behind them, and his voice soon disappeared. Chu Luiyue didn't look back. She walked all the way. She skipped past the other two gods and went directly to the innermost cell. Luo Yin was inside, sitting with his back to the door. His situation was a little different from Nan Hongyang's. There weren't too many messy blood stains in his cell, and he didn't seem to have been tortured too much. He was sitting there perfectly fine. Chu Luiyue understood that it was useless to use all sorts of torture methods on such a person. She had to use other methods. Luo Yin. Chu Luiyue called out. Luo Yin didn't move at all. He turned a deaf ear to her. Chu Luiyue didn't mind. She continued, You should have known that Nanny's death had nothing to do with us that day, right? Luo Yin still didn't respond. Chu Luiyue laughed. Actually, since you've killed Nan Yuxing with your own hands from a certain point of view, you've avenged the woman you like, haven't you? Her words were simple, but it made Luo Yin turn around abruptly. His expression was very complicated. Shock, anger, shame, resentment. However, these emotions only flashed through his eyes for a moment. After a while he said coldly, I don't know what you're talking about. Because he hadn't spoken for a few days, his voice was hoarse. Chu Luiyue looked at him. Her eyes were clear and sharp, like a sharp blade that tore through his last layer of disguise. You should know very well how Nan Yuxing recovered his Yuan Meridian in such a short period of time and even broke through to the Supreme God level, right? Even I can sense that he has Nanny's aura on him. Luo Yin, how could you not sense it? Luo Yin didn't say anything, but his hands gradually clenched. Every word Chu Luiyue said was like a steel nail that pierced his heart accurately. Blood dripped. During this period of time, we didn't even see the Nan family, let alone do anything to them. How did Nanny die? How did her outstanding Yuan Meridian transfer to her biological brother's body? Luo Yin, I don't think you need me to tell you the truth, right? Chu Luiyue bent down slightly, leaned forward, and asked softly, So this is how you like Nanny? Luo Yin gritted his teeth and trembled slightly. There seemed to be a string in his mind that was stretched taut. Rong Xiu suddenly said, Luo Yin, if Nanny's biological mother knows that you have such feelings for Nanny and let her die without knowing why, how do you think she will look at you when she meets you in the afterlife? Don't forget that you are her biological brother. This sentence finally made Luo Yan's expression change abruptly. He suddenly stood up, looked at Rong Xiu in shock and clenched his teeth. What else do you know? Digression. Today I saw a sentence. In the mountains and rivers of a foreign land, the wind and the moon are the same. Everyone must work hard together. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience from AI. Come. Chapter 1924. Hearing Rong Xiu's words, Chu Luiyue also turned around in shock and glanced at him. What did he mean? Luo Yin was Nan Yi's biological mother's brother? Nan Yi and Nan Yuxing's mother was called Yi Dai, and she was also the matriarch of the Nan family. It was said that she passed away not long after giving birth to Nan Yi, so Nan Yifan doted on this daughter very much. As for Luo Yin, it had always been rumored that he was a distant relative of Yi Dai. Because he had no family and no one to rely on, and because of his outstanding talent, he was brought to the Nan family and became half a member of the Nan family. All these years, Luo Yin had indeed lived up to everyone's expectations. He had cultivated smoothly and broken through to become a god-level expert. Coupled with his relationship with Yi Dai, his status in the Nan family was even more honorable. This was also why he took special care of Nan Yuxing and Nan Yi. But Chu Luiyue never expected that Luo Yin was actually Yi Dai's biological brother. And judging from Luo Yan's reaction, it was clearly true. Chu Luiyue couldn't help but gasp when she understood the hurdle. If that was the case then. Luo Yin liked Nanyi. No wonder he refused to admit it previously. If this matter was known by the world, then his and Nanyi's reputation would be completely ruined. Even though Nanyi was already dead, Luo Yin was still alive. Once such a stain was stained, it would be extremely difficult to wash it off. Chu Luiyue was still in shock, while Luo Yin was about to break down in the cell. Rong Xiu's words directly snapped the last string in his mind. Immense shock and panic surged in his heart. He was indeed Yi Dai's biological brother. To be precise, he was her biological half-brother. He was the illegitimate son of Yi Dai's father. For so many years, his identity had been concealed very well. Other than his father and Yi Dai, no one else knew. Especially since the two of them had already been gone for more than 10 years. This secret had almost been completely sealed in the dust of time, never to see the light of day again. Yi Dai was very good to him, but unfortunately she passed away early. Later on he wanted to take good care of the two children, especially Nanyi. She looked very similar to Yi Dai, so he naturally doted on her even more. But even he didn't expect that over time, this feeling would quietly change. He didn't dare to face it and had always buried it deeply. He had never thought about it too much. He couldn't figure out how Rong Xiu found out. All of Luo Yan's calmness and composure had completely vanished at this moment. He looked at Rong Xiu with a crazed expression as if he wanted to cut him into pieces. Unfortunately, this kind of attack had no effect on Rong Xiu. His expression was as usual. His handsome and enchanting face was half lit and half dark under the dim light of the lantern. In Luo Yan's eyes, he was like a killing god from hell. If Nan Yifan knows about this, he shouldn't be able to tolerate you, right? As he spoke, he raised his eyebrows and laughed. Oh, not necessarily. After all, Nanyi died in his hands. No matter what, he is the one who let Nanyi down the most. What right does he have to criticize you? There was dead silence in the dark and cramped cell. Chu Luiyue could only hear rapid breathing. Luo Yin supported himself against the wall with one hand and covered his chest with the other. He bent down slightly and panted heavily. All kinds of unpleasant and suffocating smells poured into his nose, but he didn't feel anything. Rong Xiu's words were like a sharp sword, tearing apart the last layer of disguise he used to numb himself. Nan Yifan, it was really him. Yes, if it wasn't him, who else could it be? He was the biological father of these two people. When Nan Yuxing recovered, he had always been by his side. If he hadn't done it, he would have sensed that something was wrong long ago. But he didn't do anything. He pretended to be peaceful and crossed the sea. Immense pain surged and completely drowned Luo Yen like a wave. Chu Luiyue also frowned. She had previously guessed that it might be Nan Yifan who did it. But she wasn't sure. After all, that was his biological daughter, the pearl in his palm that he had doted on since she was young. She still clearly remembered the anger and heartache on Nan Yifan's face when he saw that Nanyi was injured. That wasn't an act. It was also because of this that it was even more unbelievable that he did this. How could he be so ruthless? Chu Luiyue pursed her lips. Since Rong Xiu said so, it should be confirmed. In fact, it was very likely that he already knew who did it. Depriving a person of their yuan meridian and transferring it to another person's body was a very complicated and energy-consuming thing. Nan Yifan wasn't a celestial physician, so he definitely didn't do it himself. In fact, there weren't many people in the entire Divine Ruins who had this ability. After a long while, Luo Yin finally straightened up. Chu Luiyue noticed that his hand, which was supporting himself against the wall, was already badly mangled because of the force he exerted. What do you want to ask and what do you want me to do? Luo Yin asked slowly. His face was ashen, as if all his energy had been sucked away in an instant. He was dispirited like a walking corpse. At this point he knew that there was nothing he could do. Rong Xiu and Chu Luiyue looked at each other. Chu Luiyue nodded slightly, then took a step forward and asked, "Did Nan Yifan instruct you to assassinate us this time?" Luo Yin nodded. He hadn't said anything before because he still had a last glimmer of hope in his heart. But Rong Xiu's words completely shattered everything. The Nan family? Nan Yifan? They were all the culprits who harmed Nanyi. Furthermore, the thoughts that he had hidden so tightly had already been discovered by others. What was the point of continuing to hide? He didn't want to live anymore, and those people should all be buried with him. A trace of madness gradually surged from Luo Yan's eyes. Nan Yifan shouldn't have the ability to do so himself. Do you know who he asked to do it? Chu Luiyue asked tentatively. Luo Yan closed his eyes. I don't know. Back then he had accompanied Nanyi to the Yuntian Tower. After being rejected at the door, he had finally persuaded Nanyi to go back. But the two of them were attacked on a mountain not far from the Yuntian Tower. He had also fallen into a coma at that time, and when he woke up again he was in the Nan family. It was also at that time that he heard that Nanyi was dead. He didn't know what had happened in between. Chu Luiyue didn't ask further. It seemed that Luo Yan really didn't know. But since he was willing to admit that Nan Yifan had instructed them to do it this time, it was enough. It was obvious that Nan Yifan wouldn't tell anyone about such a confidential matter. Chu Luiyue stretched out his hand. That thing is useless in your hands now. Why don't you give it to me? Luo Yan was stunned at first, but then he understood what Chu Luiyue meant. She wanted the flowing cloud flying diagram. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1926. When the flowing cloud flying diagram was unfolded, it was about 30 feet long. It was blank and shrouded in a layer of faint red glow. Chu Luiyue raised her eyebrows. There's a restriction on it. Rongxiu laughed. After all, it's one of the 10 great divine artifacts. The Nan family values it very much. It's normal that there's a restriction on it. Chu Luiyue nodded and carefully looked at the scroll in front of her. Apart from the layer of restriction on the flowing cloud flying diagram, she could not feel any energy fluctuations from it. Even if it was released, it would be difficult for anyone to guess that it was a divine artifact. Chu Luiyue thought for a while and sat up. Rongxiu was a little reluctant, but he still let go of her and helped her put on her coat. His slightly calloused fingers brushed past her delicate and smooth shoulder, leaving only a fragrant scent. Chu Luiyue put on her clothes and got off the bed. At the same time, she waved her hand and the transparent heavenly square cauldron appeared in the room. She grabbed the flowing cloud flying diagram and threw it in. The transparent karmic fire suddenly burned. It instantly swallowed the red scroll. Rongxiu's posture was lazy. He leaned against the bed head and one of his long legs bent. The quilt slid down, revealing a large area of his marble-like chest. He tilted his head slightly and looked at it with interest. Chu Luiyue stood beside the heavenly square cauldron and stared at it. Her bright and resplendent eyes reflected the light of the flames, as dazzling as the galaxy. After a moment, a slight cracking sound was heard. Crack. Immediately after, the layer of light that enveloped the red scroll shattered like ice. Chu Luiyue raised her hand. The flowing cloud flying diagram flew out again and landed in her hand. Whoosh. She unfolded it again. This time, without the obstruction of that layer of restriction, she was finally able to see the true appearance of this thing clearly. She could not help but be shocked and widened her eyes slightly. With a white silk cloth as the base, countless strong and bright colors were spread out and intertwined with each other. It was like a painting, but it wasn't. It was as if someone had accidentally broken the paint board and spread all the colors together. At first glance, it was messy, but there was an indescribable beauty to it. Chu Luiyue was a little stunned. Flowing cloud flying diagram. So that's how it is? She subconsciously reached out her hand. When her fingertips touched it, she realized that the pattern on it was uneven. No, this is a Xian formation? Chu Luiyue moved closer and took a closer look. Only then did he see that the seemingly chaotic colors on the surface were actually all small profound formations. The entire scroll was divided into countless tiny areas the size of a fingernail by transparent threads. Different Xian formations were drawn on each of these areas. The patterns were so fine and exquisite that it was almost impossible to distinguish them clearly. Even with Chu Luiyue's eyesight, he still couldn't see it clearly. After staring at the dazzling profound formation for a while, she suddenly had a thought. She extended a finger and pointed it at a small area within the formation. A trace of origin power was injected into it. Immediately after, a ray of light flew out from her fingertip. A huge profound formation quickly spread out in front of her. A strong pressure spread out from the profound formation. Chu Luiyue's breathing stopped, and she immediately raised her head to look at the profound formation. An indistinct roar came from it and lingered in his ears. She sucked in a breath of cold air in disbelief. 4 symbols formation? This was a profound formation that could only be constructed by a great Shen King master. She had seen the 4 symbols formation's profound formation diagram in Lingxiao College before, but her realm wasn't enough at that time, so she only took a few glances and put it aside. But at that time she remembered a part of the profound formation. So when she saw the profound formation in front of her, she recognized it at a glance. And this was just an inconspicuous little pattern on the flowing cloud flying diagram. Chuliwa looked at the flowing cloud flying diagram again. A bold conjecture suddenly appeared in her mind, causing her heart to beat faster. She held her breath and lightly pointed at another area. A slight sound of something breaking through the air was heard. Another ray of light spread out. It was also an extremely complicated profound formation. Revolving sky formation. Chuliwa muttered in shock. This profound formation's level was the same as the four symbols formation. She paused for a moment, pursed her lips, and pointed at the third location. A brighter profound formation that was bigger than the previous two appeared in front of her. And the pressure on it was obviously stronger than the four symbols formation and the revolving sky formation. This is, Chuliwa was dazzled for a moment. Lightning pattern formation. A low and pleasant voice came from behind her. Chuliwa turned around and glanced at Rongxiu. This is a great grandmaster level profound formation? Rongxiu smiled faintly and nodded. That's right. Chuliwa didn't say anything for a while. Great grandmaster. For so many years she had only seen one great grandmaster level expert, and that was her master, Nan Suhuai. It was also because of this identity that Nan Suhuai's position in the Divine Ruins world was extremely high. Shen masters were not common, and those of this level were even rarer. It was unknown how much strength and mental energy was needed to display a great grandmaster level profound formation. But just now, she had only used her finger to lightly point and injected her force, and Chuliwa could hear the sound of her heart beating violently. She once again looked at the gorgeous and intense colors. There were at least thousands of profound formations on it, and any one of them was a profound formation at the level of a great Shen King master. Needless to say, there were even higher level profound formations. Flowing cloud flying diagram, so this is the real flowing cloud flying diagram. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1927. Chuliwa couldn't hide her shock. She had heard of the flowing cloud flying diagram before. Among the famous 10 great sacred artifacts, the flowing cloud flying diagram was actually a very inconspicuous one. Because it had almost no combat power, it was almost equivalent to a mobile teleportation array. Other than being able to send someone away at a critical moment and save a life most of the time, it had no use. Moreover, he might not be able to accomplish this every single time. Didn't Luo Yan and the others fail before? Because the Peach Blossom Cove's barrier collapsed, the flowing cloud flying diagram was disturbed by Chuliu's side, and in the end they were intercepted again. From the looks of it, the flowing cloud flying diagram's name as one of the 10 great sacred artifacts was really a little exaggerated. The reason why Chuliwa took it from Luo Yan was because she had the principle of not letting any treasure go. She was also a little curious. If she had any expectations for this thing, she really didn't. Chuliwa already had the heavenly square sacred cauldron, and this was the most famous of the 10 great sacred artifacts. So when she looked at the others, they were actually just SOSO. But she never thought that, so there was actually such a secret hidden in the flowing cloud flying diagram. So many high-grade Shen formations arranged densely together, what did it mean? One had to know that to activate these Shen formations, one only needed to inject a strand of origin power. A great Shen King master working himself to death and painstakingly drawing a Shen formation might not even be as light as this flowing cloud flying diagram. This was simply a fundamental suppression. This was a true treasure. Even Chuliwa, who had seen countless treasures, was a little stunned at this moment. This flowing cloud flying diagram greatly exceeded her imagination. It was rare for Rongxiu to see such a reaction from her. He admired it for a while and his heart was filled with love. He endured it again and again, and only then did he restrain himself from going over to pull her back. There's naturally a reason why the flowing cloud flying diagram can be listed as one of the 10 great sacred artifacts. A smile appeared on his lips, and it seemed to spread between his brows again, rubbing out some ambiguous spring. Chuliwa turned back to look at him. You knew? Rongxiu laughed and shook his head. This is also my first time seeing the flowing cloud flying diagram. However, I did know that Nan Yifan valued this thing very much. Now I finally understand the reason. Chuliu's hand gently brushed across the flowing clouds flying diagram. The 3 Shen formations quickly flew back. It didn't look any different from before. The waves in Chuliu's heart could not calm down for a long time. She was a mystic cultivator. She knew all too well what kind of astonishing battle prowess such a treasure possessed. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he could fight against 10,000 alone. That's right. The Nan family is so arrogant. How could something that could catch their eye be an ordinary object? That's right. Only when so many Shen formations exist at the same time, would they be able to possess such a powerful strength that could shatter space at any time. Chu Luiyue gently exhaled. But if the flowing cloud flying diagram is so powerful, why didn't Luo Yan and the others use it before? Rong Xiu paused slightly. The flowing clouds flying diagram belongs to the Nan family. If I'm not wrong, Nan Yifan should have given it to Nan Yuxing in the beginning to let him use it in case of an emergency. However, later on, perhaps Luo Yan said something or did something, but the flowing cloud flying diagram ended up in his hands. It's a pity that he didn't know the true use of this flowing clouds flying diagram, so he wasted a chance to escape. If he could use these Xian formations at that time, even if the Peach Blossom Cove's barrier collapsed, they wouldn't be stopped by Chu Luiyue's power and could leave smoothly. Chu Luiyue nodded in agreement. When she got this thing, the restriction on it indeed didn't have Luo Yan's aura. This time the Nan family has suffered such heavy losses. Nan Yifan shouldn't have no reaction. Chu Luiyue stared at the flowing clouds flying diagram for a while, and finally put it away. I just don't know what they plan to do this time. Nan Yifan must have received the news long ago and knew what had happened here. But until now they hadn't done anything. This was really abnormal. Rong Xiu smiled. Counter soldiers with arms, water with an earth weir. His tone was somewhat casual, and his eyebrows were relaxed as if he didn't think this would pose any threat. Chu Luiyue blinked. She was a little curious. What exactly did Rong Xiu have on Nan Yifan? By the way, why hasn't there been any news from the Black Demon Cave? Chu Luiyue suddenly thought of something and asked curiously. That day she had clearly seen the totem of the Black Demon Cave appear between Mo Yun's eyebrows. The entire Black Demon Sword sect should be a force of the Black Demon Cave. For some reason, they secretly sent some people to build a so-called Black Demon Sword sect in the Peach Blossom Cove. On the one hand, they constantly absorbed all kinds of cultivation geniuses, and on the other hand they coveted the treasures at the foot of the Peach Blossom Cove. The latter Chu Luiyue could understand. What they wanted to fight for should be those thin blue crystals. It was just that they didn't expect that after all the work, it would be intercepted by her in the end. But Chu Luiyue still didn't understand the former. Why did the Black Demon Cave secretly recruit so many cultivators? They kept the talented ones and killed the ordinary ones directly. What exactly do they want to do? Thinking of the various scenes she had seen before, Chu Luiyue felt a chill run down her spine. In the past few years, the Black Demon Cave seemed to be hiding from the world, but in fact all kinds of secret movements had not decreased at all. Rong Xiu suddenly said, "Do you still remember the scene when you got that shield?" Digression, 7 o'clock. From this month onwards, February will become a diligent February again. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1928. I remember. Chu Luiyue put away the heavenly square cauldron and walked toward Rong Xiu. What's wrong? Rong Xiu said. Some of the people who fought with us back then were from the Black Demon Cave. Chu Luiyue was stunned at first, and a trace of surprise flashed across her eyes, but she quickly regained her composure. I should have thought of it. At that time, the Peach Blossom Cove was filled with all kinds of people, and no one knew each other's identities. Moreover, there were even more people involved in the robbery of treasures, and it was impossible to investigate everyone's background. Chu Luiyue didn't know that she had obtained a top-tier divine artifact, so she didn't pay much attention to it after the matter was over. Now that she thought about it, the people from the Black Demon Cave had been after the Black Shield from the beginning. Or perhaps, the zither score in her body? Chu Luiyue frowned slightly. Rong Xiu reached out to her, pulled her into his arms and kissed her forehead. Don't worry, no matter who comes, I'm here. Chu Luiyue looked up and glanced at him. You mean, the people from the Black Demon Cave and the Nan family will all come here? Rong Xiu's lips curled up slightly. She was still smart and she could always guess what he meant. It shouldn't be just them. Rong Xiu held her waist, intertwining his fingers with hers, and a dark look flashed across his eyes. The Peach Blossom Cove is a treasure trove, and many people have coveted it for so many years, but because of the unstable barrier, they haven't been able to make a move. Now that you've taken over the Peach Blossom Cove, many people will undoubtedly be jealous. Chu Liyue had already thought of this. These days, she had asked Sun Yi and the others to hurry up with the various matters of the Peach Blossom Cove in preparation for the impending crisis. However, that might not be enough. The people from the Yuntian Tower will be here soon. The Peach Blossom Cove is yours and no one can take it from you. Rong Xiu's voice was gentle, but it carried a strong pressure that could not be disobeyed. There seemed to be waves surging in the depths of his eyes. Chu Liyue gently nodded. Don't worry, I can protect my own things. The news of Chu Liyue occupying the Peach Blossom Cove quickly spread throughout the Divine Ruins world. All the aristocratic families and clans were in an uproar, their hearts filled with shock. Peach Blossom Dock. That was a delicious cake that countless people in the Divine Ruins world were secretly eyeing. Abundant heaven and earth energy, an excellent geographical location, endless resources that had never been exploited. It was simply a new and ideal world. Even though countless people had returned in defeat over the years, there were still quite a few people who held on to that tiny bit of hope, hoping to find an opportunity to take over the Peach Blossom Cove for themselves. Most of those who had this idea were first-rate families and clans. Those who were weaker in terms of level and strength knew that they had no chance of success even though it was an extravagant wish. Countless people had thought of this question. Who would Peach Blossom Dock belong to in the end? Those first-rate families and clans in the Divine Ruins world all had this kind of hope for themselves. But now, before anyone could react, there was news that the Peach Blossom Cove had been taken over? And that person was Chu Liyue. What was her identity? The princess consort of the Yuntian Tower's Saint Rong Xiu. The direct disciple of Lingxiao College's dean, Nansu Huai. The descendant of the weapon-refining venerable Shangguan Jing. Recently, this name had become famous throughout the entire Divine Ruins world. Not only because of these identities, but also because of the close relationship between her and the two ancient Divine Beast clans. Who didn't know that her contracted Divine Beast was the young master of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan? Who didn't know that the clan leader of the Great Phoenix Dragon clan had specially gone to the Yuntian Tower to give her and Rong Xiu a congratulatory gift? Even so, it was still unbelievable that she had taken over the Peach Blossom Cove. Not to mention, it was rumored that she had relied on her own strength to reconstruct the barrier of the Peach Blossom Cove. It was simply a fantasy. So many first-rate families and clans had mobilized their entire clan to take over the Peach Blossom Cove, but they had all failed. How could such a young girl do it? No one was willing to believe it. However, the news that came later made them believe that the Peach Blossom Cove was now completely under Chu Liyue's control. I heard that her subordinates are now in charge of the entire Peach Blossom Cove. Now, the two entrances of the Peach Blossom Cove, one is connected to the Gate Realm, and the other is facing the interior. Both entrances have been heavily guarded by her subordinates. Anyone who enters or exits will have to undergo strict scrutiny. Family. In front of the ancestral hall, a solemn family meeting was being held. All the important people of Family Yi had gathered here. Originally, their most important task today was to choose the Family Yi's young master. However, the sudden news from the Peach Blossom Cove had caused an uproar. They couldn't help but shift part of their attention to the Peach Blossom Cove. Although Family Yi rarely got involved in these matters in the world of God, it didn't mean that they didn't pay attention to it. Moreover, Family Yi had been harboring some thoughts about the Peach Blossom Cove all these years. Now, before they could make a move, someone else had beaten them to it. Who could accept it? An old man said as he stroked his beard and sighed. It's only been a few days. That's really fast. Humph, how could she take over the Peach Blossom Cove by herself? I think the power behind this matter is most likely from the Yuntian Tower. Another old man sneered coldly. The Yuntian Tower was actually referring to Rong Xiu. Many people nodded in agreement. Chu Liyue and Rong Xiu were husband and wife. How could Rong Xiu not be involved in this matter? I heard that the subordinates that Shangguan Yu brought with her were previously her subordinates outside the world of God. I don't think they are very capable and can't handle the matters in the Peach Blossom Cove well. The people behind this must be from the Yuntian Tower, right? Someone guessed. In fact, more than one person thought so. Almost everyone had the same thought. The old man who spoke first frowned and said hesitantly. But I received news that Shangguan Yu has a subordinate who seems to have been in the Peach Blossom Cove for a few years and is doing very well. I think he's called Bossen. He's quite famous. Didn't this prove that she and her subordinates were actually quite capable? However, most people didn't think much of this. Who knows what's going on? Anyway, I think that Shangguan Yu took over the Peach Blossom Cove with the help of a lot of people. That's how she became it. She didn't even think about how powerful her backer was. What a pity. It's such a good place. Jun Jiuqing sat in his seat and lowered his eyes slightly. No expression could be seen on his face. Just as everyone was lamenting, Yi Wentao walked out of the ancestral hall. Everyone quickly quieted down. Young master family Yi, I already have a suitable candidate in mind. Yi Wentao's gaze swept across the crowd and finally landed on Jun Jiuqing. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from LoveNet. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.